ready?
Are you prepared to be scared?
I'm prepped.
We're about to put the monster in Monstober.
And it's gonna get spooky.
Now!
The following film contains some scenes that may be frightening for some viewers. Watch out for boos and bangs and oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming moments. 'Cause they're in there. Parental guidance is recommended.
Cinemoddities! Late night movies with Rob and Zack. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, normal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally these projects gel. Sometimes they crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Zack.
And I'm Carly Beth, and this week on Cinemoddities, we have to start with a disclaimer for the second time in our history. Zack, would you like to say the disclaimer this year? Do you know the disclaimer?
Listener beware, you're in for a scare.
Oh, yes. It is the annual Goosebumps episode, the first episode of the Monstober series that does not get released in Monstober. That's the portion that Goosebumps gets relegated to in terms of Zack's Monstober.
I want to say that because I am slowly getting comfortable with the idea of adding Goosebumps to Monstober, is that Monstober is less of a time of year and it's more of a state of mind.
Yes, absolutely. I think you said the same thing last year. But I'm totally on board. I'm glad that Zack has given us the opportunity to watch some more Goosebumps. And just as we did last year, we're discussing 3 episodes. 2 of them are the half-an-hour spots. 1 of them is a double feature, so a 40-minute episode. And before we get into them, I don't know if Zack went back and listened to our Goosebumps episode from last year, but there was an update I said we were going to have. And if Zack and the audience don't remember, the update I said we were going to have was that by this time, Zack would have taken hallucinogenics and watched Goosebumps. So I made that promise to the audience.
Oh, God.
How did that go, Zack?
I did listen to last year's episode, all like 150 minutes of it. And folks, I want to say that if you listen to our podcast like 1.5 times normal speed, it actually still makes sense somehow, or it makes no less sense than it usually does, is maybe the correct way of phrasing it.
Perfect.
But I do remember Rob saying that, and unfortunately, I forgot my magic mushrooms at home.
Oh, okay. So next year is what you're saying?
Maybe.
All right. So I guess to kick it off, I will say which 3 episodes we're discussing. We are going to be discussing Season 3, Episode 18, Say Cheese and Die Again. Not surprisingly, the sequel to what we covered last year, Say Cheese and Die. We will also be discussing the first episode of Season 3, A Shocker on Shock Street. And then the pilot episode of Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask. Well, I don't know if you had any ideas, Zack, how you wanted to go through it, if you had any introductory stuff, but I was figuring we could start off with Say Cheese and Die Again, because it's our first true sequel. We've been waiting a year to get this second half of the story, right?
All right. Sure, Rob. But I have to ask, because out of these 3 episodes, it's very similar to what happened last year on the Goosebumps episode, whereas I absolutely loved 1, had no feelings about 1 of them, and the third of the 3, in the sense of just out of the 3 allotment, I absolutely hated. Yeah. So I have to ask, before we get into these, what made you pick these 3 episodes? Because in last year's episodes, you said the Haunted Mask episode was an episode you didn't particularly like.
Yes, and that's still true. It's probably one of my least favorite episodes of Goosebumps. We'll get into that. That's not to say that I don't think there is some enjoyability to be gained from it. I have to say that rewatching it for this recording, I enjoyed it a little more than I think I ever have. But I picked the Haunted Mask for exactly that reason, because it's one of the ones that I don't enjoy as much. Also because whenever I talk to Goosebumps about, I mention it, maybe when it gets around the Monstober time of the year, I'll tell people, oh, that's what I'm watching a lot of. This is the one that people will always remember for some reason, the Haunted Mask. I mean, I get it that it was the pilot episode, so it might have the most staying power, the first on the list. But other than the Haunted Mask, I picked Say Cheese and Die again because we needed to get the sequel to our Ryan Gosling episode from last year. And then I actually picked A Shocker on Shock Street because someone else that I was hanging out with maybe a few months ago, they saw that I had Goosebumps on my TV, and they really wanted to watch this episode, and we had a grand old time watching it for a few reasons, but most specifically one scene. So I figured that one kind of took the cake because I really wanted to get the Monster Blood episodes in here, but that would have been basically the whole episode if we covered all of them.
Still no trilogy?
Oh no. I don't think we're ever going to. I guess I should also say that we're keeping the tradition alive in that every episode of Goosebumps we are discussing on this podcast is from the original series of Goosebumps books. Of course, Trilogy is the one that is not based on any of the books, but we aren't even doing any of the tales from Goosebumps, the Goosebumps Presents, the Ultimate Goosebumps, none of those, just the original series. I'm a purist.
There's an Ultimate Goosebumps?
Oh, there's quite a few versions of Goosebumps.
Oh my god. Oh no. Oh no.
I mean, there's tales to give you goosebumps, even more tales to give you goosebumps, still more tales to give you goosebumps. I'm serious. I'm not even making these names up. These actually exist.
Oh no. Oh no.
So,
all right, Rob.
Goosebumps 2000. How could I forget about that?
How could you? All right, Rob, because this is your baby, I'm going to let you decide whatever order to go in that you think is best.
All right. I think we should start with, since last year started with Say Cheese and Die, we will begin this year kicking off Monstober hardcore with Say Cheese and Die again. So I'm gonna take a guess, Zach, since you had, kind of one at each major point of the spectrum, the hate, the love, and the indifferent. Is this the indifferent one?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess the first question, since I already mentioned it, if you don't recall, the original Say Cheese and Die has young Ryan Gosling in the lead role of Greg Banks.
Yeah, that's my boyfriend.
He does a great job. We loved him in that episode. I think that's what changed Zach's entire opinion about Goosebumps. But doesn't it kind of suck that we got like cheap knockoff Ryan Gosling in this episode because they couldn't get him back 2 seasons later?
I kept referring to him while I was watching as discount Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
Off-brand Ryan Gosling.
They're really trying to make him look just like he did in the first episode.
Oh boy, do that.
But it doesn't hit the mark in any way, shape, or form.
That's a weird thing I realized with Goosebumps is like when they would do follow-up episodes, they tried to get back as many of the original actors as they could.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they had like mixed success with that.
Yeah. And this one I think they had not so much success with.
Yeah, because his little girlfriend, is the same actress, right?
I think she's one of the only ones that carries over. Because I think the mother's different. I think the brother's different also.
No Spider.
And no Spider. The friend, the baseball playing friend, Bird, he's gone. So, it's very torn down. And I guess that's kind of, one of the things I have to say about this is that I really loved, I mentioned it last year, Say Cheese and Die and the sequel. Those are probably like in top 5, probably my favorite Goosebumps books. And they did a good job with the first one. I really enjoyed that. See last year's episode. This one is just, it's so watered down and it's so lame and none of it works really. It's a big kind of, disappointment, I would say.
Yeah. No, I don't want to say disappointment because it does exactly what you expect a Goosebumps follow-up to do. It's like where do you go? Because again, I've not watched any Goosebumps, or I guess I did not rewatch any of the stuff. I know in last year's episode I asked Rob for all these different episodes. I did not watch any of it. As I'm listening to it today, I'm like, wow, I really did not follow up on any of this. But like again, the Ryan Gosling thing. 'Cause I know my biggest complaint was that we have like Spider, and he's just a guy with like steampunk goggles, and it's like, why is he scary? He's just a guy like he's like I think you described him as what, like a crackhead living in a crack den, and that's pretty much it. And in this, like we've stripped away the one layer that could be even slightly considered scary.
Yeah,
and that's why I kind of looked at this as like, oh, we're rehashing the exact same plot again, with the same characters, and there's even less stakes than there were the first time.
Yeah, they rely on the camera to be the source of the terror and, the source of, I guess, motivation for the episode, and it doesn't really work. Like, it's better, like you said, with that person, Spider, who's kind of, that lurking, force in the background, I guess. And this one, it's really, I guess we should say that this story takes place a year after the first one, and it's basically after the kids' last summer vacation. When they have to come back to school, Greg has to do a report on, what happened to you during the summer, and he wants to write about this evil camera, and his teacher doesn't believe him, so he has to go back and get the evil camera to prove to his teacher that it exists, so he doesn't get an F type of thing. And we get a great line when he goes back to the abandoned building where the camera's supposed to be, and the whole building's just gone, like it's been demolished. And he like his voiceover says, "Oh man, the building's gone. They blew it up. Now I'm gonna fail." And it's just so flat and so terrible.
Sage. Oh man, the building's gone. They blew it up. Now I'm gonna fail.
But of course, for some reason, he can get into the underground area of this building by climbing through a hole, but at the same time, a security guard can get through there by not climbing through the hole, who's just, who knows? But he gets the camera, he shows it to his friend, they take pictures of each other like the plot demands it, and they don't even try to destroy the pictures. If you remember, that was the solution to what they did last time. They had to rip up the picture, and it would undo it. They don't even attempt that in this one. They're just like, let's take more pictures of each other. So it's just a mess through and through.
Such a narrative mess in the Goosebumps adaptation. No, like, okay, this one I was kind of indifferent toward, just because I feel like, again, Ryan Gosling was the fun part of that episode, because, or at least for a newcomer to this, where you don't have that nostalgia baked into it. Yeah. And I guess we should say that if you're listening to this episode for the first time, or you're listening to us talk about Goosebumps and you want us to have our legendary context on it, go listen to the episode from 2018 from a year ago, because that's where we spent the first half an hour talking about where we came from on Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ryan Gosling things were kind of the anchor for me. And even though it's funny watching not Ryan Gosling go around do his best not Ryan Gosling impersonation, it's the thing too that he gets to where Spider's lair was. And I remember even you saying last year that Spider gets brought back, he gets resurrected in the last final moments from the bullies.
Yep.
And it's we completely abandoned that.
Oh, 100%.
And then the second thing is his layers, they blew up the building. And I was wondering, could they not get access to the same location from the previous year, or was the building actually demolished?
That's a good question. I don't know.
And I was wondering that. I'm well, if the building was demolished, just go find another building, because they do eventually build a set that's meant to look like Spider's lair. So why can't you just have him go to a building, walk in, and it's Spider's lair? It's such a weird plot thread to have the building not be there. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of comes out of nowhere.
Unless they couldn't find, unless whoever, maybe that other building was a warehouse and it was being rented out 2 years later, and they couldn't get it though. But still, you can always say oh, this looks so different from how I remember it. Just throw a line of dialogue in there and be we can shoot any building. Or maybe they're just so cheap they didn't want to rent pay I guess, oh god, was it pull permits to shoot outside? They do it anyway, so I don't know what the problem would have been. So again, that just kind of like, not that it bugged me, but it was like peculiar. I'm like, what is going on here? And then when they get to the actual part where like they start taking pictures of each other, and I have to say, I am thrilled that the giant like toaster camera comes back. Like that's the one. Like, come on, if you can't get Ryan Gosling, at least you can get the toaster camera.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that is a good point. That it's the same camera prop, or it looks the same at least from the first episode, which I will reiterate, in the book, it doesn't look like a weird camera. It looks like a regular camera. But I'm with you, Zach. I'm glad they stayed consistent with that nonsense.
Yes. It makes you wonder, that has to be the same prop, right? Like somebody had to have kept that, and they like dug it out of storage for this episode, because it looks practically identical to the first one. Yeah,
I would definitely say so. I know that Goosebumps definitely has had some track record with keeping their props, especially for the bigger ones where, like Night of Living Dummy, I think there's 4 of those episodes, and they keep the same slappy prop, I think, for the first 3 until they have to revamp it for the story purposes. So I could totally see them, having a good handle on their prop room throughout these 4 seasons, for sure. That's going to come up with Shocker on Shock Street as well, where they reuse masks.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, like, that camera still has to be around somewhere, right? Like that has to be in someone's like basement or curio.
You mean in our restaurant, right?
Well, that's where it has to eventually end up. That's going to be its home forever.
Yeah.
But it has to, somebody must have kept that, right? 'Cause it's too interesting of a prop.
Definitely. I could totally see someone keeping that, somewhere, and if it's not on there in a display case, it's somewhere in their attic for their children to find years from now and be like,
yard sale.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, what is this? And be like, oh, we have no clue.
Someone goes on Antiques Roadshow and is like, I brought this, what looks like a toaster, but it takes pictures.
That's exactly why I go to yard sales, to find weird stuff like that.
Find Goosebumps props.
One day I will find a Goosebumps prop. Yep. It's turned into just collecting road signs, but one day there'll be a Goosebumps prop in there.
That's why Rob lived in Canada for a few months. He was hoping to find that yard sale where they filmed all this.
Yeah.
It was all an elaborate cover to find Goosebumps props.
Bum, bum, bum.
But yeah, this episode like pretty much plays out exactly as you would imagine it would. It's textbook Goosebumps. And I mean that in the worst way possible. In that, like, it's everything I don't like about Goosebumps, or why it like never resonated with me. It's like, like bratty dumb kid makes dumb decision. Halfway through, learns that his dumb decision will result in bad things happening to him. Yeah. Next 5 minutes is him learning how to like correct his mistake. All's well that ends well, and then weird little like mysterious flourish that punctuates like the episode. The end. Cue credits. Bump, 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 bump. And it's like, God damn it! It's like, good Lord! Like this is so bland. It's painfully bland.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's almost a complete 180. I would say it is a complete 180. Whereas the first Say Cheese and Die, I think they do a great adaptation of the book, as far as 20 minutes of a kid's show can go. But this is just, they don't do it. Like this stood out to me as one of my favorite books because this one's definitely a little more gruesome than the first one. Like something they changed for the TV show is when that security guard shows up at the warehouse when not Ryan Gosling goes to first take the camera back. In the TV show, he just like the picture gets taken of him and he falls down the stairs, and it's like, okay, that slows him down. But in the book, there's a whole thing where he like gets nails through his feet and he like steps on this board, and it's a lot more gruesome, and that always stood out to me. The book also takes place over, I think, a week and a half. So not Ryan or Greg and Sherry are gaining and losing weight respectively at a much slower pace than they are in the TV show. And there's a whole kind of like that first 3 or 4 days where they're both like, no, the camera's broken. And they actually think there's something wrong with the camera because it's printing out negatives. And there's this psychological aspect of it where they're like, oh, I'm just eating too much and, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, oh, we wasted time. Now we have to get on this camera thing. And the book plays it really, really well. And the TV show is just like, yeah, let's cram it to 19 minutes. It all happens in one day. He's going to get so fat, he's going to explode, and she's going to get so skinny, she disappears, until the brother who just happens to work at a Photoshop can reverse polarize images. And it's like, I Googled it because he's like, can you take this photo and make it a negative? And I'm like, can you make negatives in a dark room? Is that even possible?
Yeah.
And it was just, they did not do it justice. And it's a bummer, especially because the original was season 1. This is season 3. Where'd that quality go, man?
Yeah, that's kind of those things like I've realized when it comes to Goosebumps, like there is that drop off. It makes you wonder because clearly they were getting more money. I would imagine their budgets were increasing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
The whole 4th season, which is also the last, is just double feature episodes. So I'm with you. They must have been trying to cram stuff together, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about Goosebumps to really, because again, this was a Canadian production, and who knows like how they were getting their funding. Again, by that time, I don't know my Goosebumps history. Maybe for 2020's Goosebumps discussion, I'll look more into the history of Goosebumps.
So next year you're going to have done hallucinogenics and watched Goosebumps and also researched Goosebumps.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay,
yeah, it's going to be fabulous. Because even like you said, with the whole thing when they go into like the camera shop, which is a funny, like really antiquated notion in today's day and world, a camera shop, hardy har har har. And it's like whoever the brother's name is, they're like, hurry, hurry. And it's like, dude, this is like a set amount of time. There's no hurrying. The picture has to sit. It's like there's no hurrying. It's not like you can turn the flame up higher and it'll cook faster. It doesn't work that way.
I was really hoping that when they were screaming hurry, one of them was going to like bust into the dark room to scream hurry and it was going to ruin the photo making process.
Well, that at least would have been clever.
I know, right? I had my fingers crossed.
Yeah, because even like the whole thing with like he's getting bigger and bigger, and I think it's funny how they have to kind of like they didn't know how to make him like they. I guess that's the thing though. Is I'm thinking maybe they were starting to run out of money or their budgets were being trimmed, because like the thing with him getting like bigger and bigger, you only see it from like the neck up, and then like everything else we see of him like getting bigger, it's like when it's not him, it's from the neck down. So you don't know if it's the actor. It's just somebody wearing this either pads or it is someone that big in real life.
Yeah, close-ups on stomachs with shirts getting pulled up over them to make it look like it's growing. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then even her, like they didn't try. And obviously, you can't have a teenage actress. You can't like tell her to be like emaciated. So they try, but just kind of like put her in pale makeup. And she's just kind of like just acts lethargic. And it's like, good Lord, Goosebumps. Like, you're not even trying anymore.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not even trying.
I'm so glad you bring this up because we had to mention it. I want to get the clip in. It's one of the scenes in this that makes me laugh every time I see it. It's when Sherry comes over to Greg's house, and it's the first reveal that she's getting skinnier and wasting away. And they're talking to each other, and in the middle of a sentence, she like groans and goes, "Oh no, I'm getting skinnier." And she's like, and like just drops a jacket. Like literally you see her shoulders move and she drops a jacket, and it's the stupidest thing. And the sound effect, the shot, it's terrible. We'll get the clip in here. It's just...
Uh-oh, I'm getting that feeling. Oh, I think you just lost another pound.
It's classic season 3 Goosebumps.
Yeah, you can whether their budgets got cut or just the producers just didn't care anymore. It was a combination of something because the spirit wasn't there in it, and maybe too a lot of these things too that people work on it for a couple of years and they probably different showrunners. It's more of a modern term that people do move on. And also with a lot of things too, the more successful something gets, the more fingers you get into the pie, the more cooks in the kitchen. And that could be it too. Again, get successful. Everybody gets their piece of it. So you get kind of just like a mess that tastes like nothing.
Yeah, not even good cheese.
No. Or a chocolate pretzel.
Yeah, there you go. So I have to also mention about this episode something else that just makes me laugh every time. I'm pretty sure it's every single scene transition in this episode. We get to hear somebody, I'm assuming it's supposed to be Spider in the context of the narrative, but it's never stated that way. But every scene transition, we get to hear somebody whisper, "Say cheese." And it's so bad, it's comical, I think. Because it'll be something where, Greg will go to bed one night and he'll be like, "Oh, the camera's broken. I'm going to be fine." And he lays down and it fades to black. And as it fades to black and, the morning comes and it's fading in, we hear, "Say cheese." Even at the end, when like the teacher takes the picture of it and his hair starts falling out, it's like, say cheese. And I'm like, this is like, they went overboard on this, right?
Okay, I want to point it out too that much like last year, Rob gave me maybe the worst copies of these things ever.
Say cheese.
This is all I have, Zach. These are just the copies.
Say cheese.
Rob, there's like I did some research on another one of the episodes, and what I was seeing on YouTube, these things have been like, I know last year I'm like, oh, I don't think Goosebumps got an HD remaster. It did get an HD remaster, or at least some of them did, because some of them look immaculate now. We're like, oh, I'm like, I didn't even know that color was in them. Like that thing was that color. Now I'm looking at this, and it's like watching it through like a dirty tin can. Rob, will you please invest in the time and effort to find better quality versions of Goosebumps?
I'm gonna have to say no, because literally one of my notes later on, I'm reading verbatim. My note says, "I love the absolutely terrible quality of the version I have of this episode. This is what Goosebumps should look like." Yes. Some of
Goosebumps. Like, yes, Say Cheese and Die Again deserves to look like crap because it's crap in the first place. But there's another segment that we're going to talk about tonight that deserves like full like 1080p HD quality. We deserve to see everything in the frame.
I think in the version I have of Carly Beth, there's too many pixels.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What a shame, folks. What a shame. But yeah, this horrible quality again. I kept thinking, oh, maybe this is all that's out there. That was a lie, folks. There is much better quality. He's like the person with like the TV from the 1960s being like, the quality's great. All like 4:3 aspect ratio, and like I can see the dots on the screen.
Just for Goosebumps, yep.
Oh, yuck. It's funny because I remember, because there's one point when we'll get to the Haunted Mask episode, is it reminded me of the Tales from the Dark Side episode we did last year with the miser, and he has like his little shop, his like I don't know, general store shop, and I'm like, oh yeah, this kind of looks like that in the sense of like how grainy it looks. And I realized like nobody has given Tales from the Dark Side any effort since it's been released. All they've done was just poured it over from like copy to copy, and like you get a certain level of just like degrading of quality. Goosebumps is on like Netflix in 1080p, and Rob's like, yeah, F that.
It looks terrible on Netflix. I already said I'm a purist.
You're a purist in the worst way possible.
Oh yeah, I want those original VHS rips.
Oh, good lord. Good lord. Why don't you go track down VHS copy? Somebody like has like in their like closet somewhere, like where their uncle just died.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. That's why I go to yard sale.
That in the camera. That in the toaster camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good lord. But yeah, Say Cheese and Die Again, even like how it ends like exactly how you'd expect it to end. It's like, oh, the teacher gets his comeuppance. He gets his just desserts. He's losing his hair. And it's like, kill me. It's like, can the camera kill me? Like, please let me have the camera.
Please just rapid fire, like sport shot, me with that camera. Just get like 100 pictures in 2 seconds.
I'm wondering, like, can I dangle, like, can I take a bath and have the camera and like drop it? Will it electrocute me and kill me?
Nice.
Oh dear, yes. I was like indifferent toward that, borderline like I did not like this.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bummer. Say Cheese and Die Again. But we've completed it. They let it down in the TV show episode, but we've also completed the series in the original books. No more evil camera unless we get through all the other Goosebumps episodes. Maybe in 2024, maybe, when we do that Goosebumps episode, if Halloween still exists.
Or if maybe, until it's canceled. I have to ask, though, what does the cover of Say Cheese and Die Again look like? Because I know the last one's the barbecue with the skeletons?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely more skeletons. I think they're at like a beach or a volleyball. Oh, nope, it's a dinner table. Like a family around a dinner table. They're all skeletons. There's the little kid, the older brother, the mom. Mom's holding like a turkey platter, but the turkey's also just a skeleton. And the dog. Oh, the dog is a skeleton. And then the tagline is "Think negative, real negative."
I think it'd be more interesting if the dog wasn't a skeleton. I think that'd be like a really neat twist on it.
Like the camera just doesn't affect animals.
Maybe.
Yeah, that would be, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, not Ryan Gosling, folks. If it's not Ryan Gosling, Zack does not care.
The third in the trilogy is from the Goosebumps Horrorland series. So I didn't mention that earlier. It's Goosebumps Horrorland. And it's called Say Cheese and Die Screaming. So it's not even... Wait, they changed the punctuation, because the other two books were Say Cheese and Die... ... and then a word, or again, and say cheese and die again. This one is say cheese hyphen and die screaming.
What you're saying is, Rob, they should have called it A Good Day to Say Cheese and Die.
Yes. This was published in 2009. I think that's the dark ages of Goosebumps.
Isn't everything like after the 90s, the dark ages of Goosebumps?
Yeah, everything but the original series. Absolutely. I'm a purist.
A couple of years from now, Rob's gonna blow up like a hospital, and in the suicide note, like manifesto, it's gonna say, "I'm a Goosebumps purist."
Oh, fantastic!
Say cheese.
If I may make a request,
what
are we going to talk about next? What are we done with? Say Cheese and Die again, or are we moving on?
I think so. I think we're done with Say Cheese and Die. We're ready for our second one, and I was going to pitch that we discuss what I'm guessing is the one you hate, A Shocker on Shock Street, next.
Ding, 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 ding.
Are you dinging to that you hate it, or that you want to talk about it next, or both?
Combination of the two. Little column A, little column B.
This episode, most of my notes are just, in all capitals, we are robots and we want to live.
Yeah.
So what is this, like the Goosebumps version of Westworld, right?
That's what I kept thinking of while watching this. I'm like, because as I'm watching it, because I go into I don't do any research for the Goosebumps stuff that Rob sends me, because as I infamously said off mic, I'm gonna do it, but I'm not gonna like it. Which might be one of my favorite things I've ever said in regards to Cinemoddities. Is that's how I treat this. Like, I'm not doing any research. I'm just going in blind, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay. And like how it begins is we have like two kids walk in. The girl's like, "Oh, this is my father's workshop. He like works for like a visual effects company that like makes like movie monsters." Mm-hmm. And they have like all these really cool looking like masks and like just effects and stuff. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like you kind of predict where it's going. Then like out of nowhere, it starts to be like, "Oh, there's a tram tour," and it's like, "Okay, tram tour, whatever." And then you go and it's like, "Oh, the tram tour is like in the house." And I'm like, because that's what they're saying, right? They're saying that what? Because they sneak into the father's workshop, right? And then like all of a sudden, like the tram tour is just like right next door to the father's workshop.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
None at all.
And then they go on the little like buggy, and the buggy like stops, and because the father says what? Well, the father in quotation marks says, "Oh, don't get out of the vehicle anytime, and here are your laser guns."
Oh,
and they're like, "Why do we need laser guns?" And he's like, "Oh, like wink, wink into the camera. And so the boy gets out of the cart, and they start like walking around Shocker Street, which is supposed to be like a real life, I guess, like film set, which is never really explained properly. Why like a visual like a oh god, creature effects house has like its own like back lot, but whatever. And they start walking around, and like all these just like weird things start happening. Like it reminded me very much of like the sequence in Beetlejuice where they're walking down like the hallway and they keep opening doors like these weird things are happening, and they quickly slam the door.
I thought the same thing. Oh, right on. Yeah, they open one door and there's fire. They open another door and there's like lightning and storms, and it's just like, that's the door where lost souls go to live,
125 years. I can't believe this. I can't believe they didn't tell us.
Oh, Adam. What is this?
That's the Lost Souls room. A room for ghosts that have been exorcised. Or devils. That's death for the dead. It's all in the handbook. Keep moving.
Yeah, one of those, like every door is like a portal to a different world, which isn't like novel with Beetlejuice. It's from other things as well, but it's the most like accessible example of that. And I'm watching this being like, okay, what's happening? The whole time the girls being like the reserved one being like, we have to go back. We have to go back. And the boys like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. And they do a bunch of stuff. And eventually like he goes up to like just like a chain link fence and it's like danger, like high voltage.
Danger, danger, high voltage, when we touch, when we kiss.
He's like I don't know, like sticking like a coat, like a metal coat hanger through it. It's like, look, he doesn't do anything. Then eventually, like a man in a very bad costume like starts to maul him, and it starts like electrocuting them both. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, what sort of sham is this? And then like they go back, and I don't even remember because half of this I don't even remember. And then like the father's there, or no, I don't even. Okay, what happens? Because eventually, like we find out that they're like Westworld robots.
So after they get confronted by the dude behind the fence, and like the male kid gets electrocuted, they can't go back out, so they go in further. They get a scene with the piranha person.
Yes.
Which we're gonna that's what has to be highlighted the most out of this. But after they get away from the piranha person, they find themselves back out on Shock Street, and the dad's there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then
they're robots.
He turns them off. Does he turn them off? Or what's the specific? Because I know the girl's like, Dad, what are you doing? Despite the fact that she's supposed to look like she's like 12 or 13. He looks like he's about like 65.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, wow, this was a really like October like marriage. And like he turns the boy off, right? And she's like, what are you doing, Dad? Then
he turns the boy off, but then she like freaks out and short circuits because she has like a voice effect scene where she's like, let go of me, you're hurting me, you're hurting. And she like slows down and stops.
I want to be alive! I am alive! Alive, I tell you! Mother, I love you! Those are no longer just words! I want to hold you! I want to run in a stream! I want to taste ice cream, but not just put it in my mouth and let it slide down my throat, but really eat it! Remote override engaged? No! Yes! Bypassing override! I am alive! Hello?
What did you do? What did you do to Marty? Why did you create these monsters? What have you done with my mother? Let me go! You're evil! Let me go! Let me go! Let me go!
Let me go! Let me go!
Yeah, it's one of those, and like he goes to like all the technicians because we do have like that Westworld moment where it's like the father like in a control room, and like how the control room is just like oh god, like a panel with like 5 monitors. That's the control room.
Yeah,
and they go out, they bring the 2 like people in. He has a bunch of like assistants that all are the same, obviously inferring that they're also like robots. And he brings them in. It's like, oh, I gotta make some like adjustments to like version 2.0. Then the original ones like wake up and they're like, Gooble gobble, one of us.
We want to live.
Yeah. And like it's like the final shots like of them like strangling him, and it's like ah, and then it cuts the credits. It's like bum 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 of the Goosebumps credits, and I'm like, what kind of hot garbage is this? What kind of waste of time was this?
So okay, Zach, that was a great recap. Are you ready? We're gonna take it back to the beginning.
Oh jeez.
So, as I mentioned, as we both mentioned, I think already in this episode, the start of this, a shocker on Shock Street, the first episode of season 3, they really kicked off season 3 with a bang, right? And it includes, they're in like the special effects office, or the studio, I guess, and there's all these masks and stuff like that. And pretty much all of those masks exist in other Goosebumps episode, like Calling All Creeps. Some of the masks from the 2, Haunted Mask 1 and 2, Haunted Mask 2 actually has a double part episode, or I think a single part, in season 2 or 3. But a lot of those masks are in there. The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight mask is in there. Some of the masks in this episode get used later in season 4. So I'm pretty sure that this first scene was just shot in the prop room of the Goosebumps department. Right?
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, it's the cheapest set they could find. So I've always thought that was cool, you know, seeing all those masks, because they are neat masks, you know, neat effects that they have, practical effects in a lot of these episodes of Goosebumps. But the next thing I want to highlight is when the dad is telling the 2 kids that they're going to be the first people to try out the tram ride, like the tour of Shock Street or whatever it is. It's so awkward because the kids are like, wow, this is going to be so cool. Can mom come with us? And it comes out of nowhere. And the father just turns solemn instantly. And he's like, what did you just say? And
don't worry, you won't be disappointed.
Hey, Dad, can Mom come with us?
Excuse me? What did you say?
Can Mom come? She loves scary rides.
No. You two will be the only ones on the ride.
When I watched this for this recording, I could only think of, I haven't thought about this for years, but Zach, do you remember the fantastic YouTube video competition, specifically the Number to Heaven? Does this ring any bells?
For some reason, the name Number to Heaven rings a bell, but I don't remember anything beyond that.
Okay, so I think it was like 2009 or 2010, maybe a little earlier. There was some like YouTube channel or studio that held this competition, and it was basically you have to upload like a 90-second, maybe 2 minutes, very short YouTube video about anything you want, but it has to include the word fantastic in it somewhere. And I think that was part of their promotional thing, had something to do with some company that had fantastic in the name, or that was part of their slogan. But there was one video that will always stick with me because it starts and like the camera pans up and there's just like a little rowboat out on a lake. And on this rowboat, there's a big tentacle monster actually rowing the boat.
Oh, yeah!
And the little kid with the chain around his neck.
And you know where this came from, right?
Vaguely. This was
Wet
back in
Soup.
the day.
Wet Soup.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, that's how we found out about it, and it turned out to be part of this competition. I think I found years later. But yes, there's in this video you see this giant monster, this little kid, and
good Lord, Rob, how do you remember this?
I don't know. This is what this line made me think of. And the little man is like, I wish Mom was here. Can I talk to her? And the monster says, only if you know the number to heaven, and then throws a cinder block off of the boat. And you see that the cinder block is connected to the chain around the kid's neck, and the kid gets pulled under, and the boat like rows away, and you see the boat is called SS Fantastic.
Yeah, Fantastic Fest. Yeah, I remember
Fantastic.
That, yeah.
That's it. I'm glad you remember this.
Do you ever think about Mom?
Yeah, I do.
I miss her so much.
You know, you really remind me of your mother sometimes.
You think we can call her?
Do you know the number to heaven?
This is what it made me think of when
God.
out of nowhere, this little girl was like, can Mom come with us? I wanted the father to be like, only if you know the number to heaven. But yeah, this hit me like a ton of bricks when I remembered this last night. I'm so glad this wasn't just kind of an alternate reality I'm remembering.
Oh my God, this might be the first time in the history of mankind that someone made a reference to Web Soup. Like in earnest, like a Web Soup clip, like not just the fact that like the Fantastic Fest like clip, it was through Web Soup because we haven't again Web. I don't think Rob, is Web Soup out there at all? Like I guess you would have to check for that.
Yeah, I never hear about it anymore.
Oh God, remember what was it? Remember what was the dog? Oh God, the girl with the dog for a father.
Oh yeah, oh my God.
It's like, Dad, why can't I see Mom? Bonk. But Dad, that's what you do all the time. Bonk.
Hey, so listen, I had like a great time hanging out today.
Me too. I love school.
Yeah, it's the best. Can I call you sometime?
Yes.
Great. I will call you.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
I gotta go. It's my dad.
It's the girl with a dog for a father. Only on TGIF.
Are you ready to talk about why Mom left?
Stop honking the horn, Dad! Stop it!
The girl with a dog for a father is a Miller Boyette production.
Oh man, we're gonna have to dig deep for some clips.
Oh God, wow. Tuck. I did not. Of all the things, for those of you on your Cinemoddities bingo card that had Web Soup Fantastic Fest clip reference. Oh man, you hit the jackpot.
Oh, fantastic! Do you know the
Absolutely.
number, Evan?
Oh dear, but no. Okay, Rob. Well played reference.
Good. So yeah, that came out of this episode. The next thing I had to mention was, did you pick up on when right before the kids get on the tram ride, the tram shows up and it shows like the front, the stylized, design of the monster head on the tram. The tram says something. Did you hear what it said?
No, Rob, because I watched a really bad copy I was provided with.
The tram actually says, "Rider beware, you're in for a scare."
Oh, yes, now I pick up on that.
This looks scary.
Riders beware. You're in for a scare.
Cool.
So we've gotten reader, we've gotten viewer, we've gotten rider, we've gotten listener. We're getting all these people better beware.
All the senses?
All the senses, yes.
Liquor beware, you're in for a scare.
Perfect. So I think the only other thing I want to mention before we jump into the piranha person scene, because that's the best scene in this whole thing. The book, I like to highlight this episode because this is one of them that is wildly different from the book, and it seems like it's because of either time constraints or budget constraints. In the book, and actually on the cover of A Shocker on Shock Street, there's a giant praying mantis. And that's basically the main antagonist of the book, is a giant praying mantis. And that was so iconic that that's actually in the Jack Black movie. Like, the thing that they released from this book is the giant praying mantis. And it's always so strange to me when I watch this episode every year that they get rid of that. They also get rid of Wolf Boy and Wolf Girl, which are basically like the foreshadowing characters in the book that our main characters are also robots or animatronics in some sense. There's a whole kind of slew of storylines that get condensed, like we said with Say Cheese and Die Again, that get like torn down to their most bare minimum and thrown into just this quick, okay, they got to get from point A to point B. How many places can we throw in weird shit happening? And that takes away from the story.
Yeah.
Piranha person, though, this scene is hilarious. So as they're trying to escape, Piranha person attacks them. Piranha person is just a person in a black cloak, and their head's a piranha. And everything in this scene,
of course it is.
Everything in this scene is fantastically funny. From one, the whole time that this scene is going on, Piranha person is standing there. It's not moving towards them. It's just standing there, writhing around like its arms and just screaming, making its screech noise. It never moves toward them. It doesn't walk towards them. It doesn't back away from them. And checkbox number 1. That's great. They're in no threat, There's just some weird shaky cam to make it feel like there's a threat. 2, the kids forget that they have guns and try and take the head of the piranha person off because they think it's a dude in a costume. But for some reason, they can't get it off, and that's when they remember they have guns. And we get the fantastic line of the girl saying, "Shoot it with the laser guns." And the boy actually says, "Oh, that's right, I forgot." And they take their guns out, and they try and reason with the piranha person. They point their laser guns at the piranha person, and they say, "Stay back, or we'll shoot." And it cuts back to the piranha person not moving from its spot. And they go, "That's it. You asked for it." And they fire the guns and they do nothing. And everything about this, Zack, is so stupid. It might be one of the greatest scenes ever. I think I've ever seen with how stupid this is.
The piranha person! Which one? No, that's a stupid question. I'd say it wants us for its afternoon snack. Maybe this isn't real. Maybe this is one big practical joke. It looks pretty real to me. There's only one way to find out. The laser guns! You're right, I forgot! Get back and you won't get hurt. Okay, you asked for it. Let him have it, Marty. They don't
did this stand out to you? Did any parts of this piranha person scene stand out to you?
The piranha person should have said, "Desire is irrelevant. I am a machine."
Because its head does pop off too, and it has to put it back on.
It's perfect. Right? Yeah, I know, right? See, like the producers of Terminator 3 were watching Goosebumps back in the 90s, going, Oh yes, definitely. Piranha person. What was your inspiration for making this film? Piranha person. What? Nothing.
Well, you know, we're thinking of the Jimmy C, the first two movies. We're thinking of Jimmy C's first movie, Piranha. How do we combine those?
There you go. Hey-o. Yeah, at one point with the guns, they try to shoot the guns. I was hoping they'd throw the guns at the Piranha Man's head.
Oh, yeah.
I was really hoping for that. They don't do that. Yeah, this whole episode was a mess.
Time.
It's bad. Like, this is a blatantly like the other one's kind of like meh. It's like, but fine. It's coasting on the fumes of just the previous, like, say cheese and die. This is just like, you have a really good premise. And clearly, because I know at one point when they're walking around Shocker Street or whatever it is, you can see like stuff in the background, like beyond the fence, and they're like, and it's like, oh, did they film this at like a Canadian Six Flags? And they just rented out like the carnival, like a little like the Old West section for like a couple of mornings before like the park opened.
Yeah,
because that's the fact. I think at one point you see like a playground like beyond the fence, and it's like, what? It's like, clearly this is like an artificial set. This is not here for like any sort of like genuine like movie making. This is just like somebody's else. It's being repurposed, and there's something else outside like the fencing.
Yeah. The seams are showing every which way.
Yeah. And I get, like you said, the very beginning, like all like the masks, because I recognized a couple of the masks just from just being like Goosebumps iconography being burned into my mind.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, neat. Like, again, the episode began, I'm like, okay, this is neat. And then like the further it goes on, it's like, what the hell is this? I'm like I can't imagine being like an 8-year-old being excited for like, do we know when like new Goosebumps episode premiere? Do we know like when, like, it was like, was it like Fridays? Did they just show up randomly?
Well,
apparently, what channel did this play on in the US when it was like new?
I think it was Fox Kids.
Oh, okay. So this is where it showed up new?
Yeah, and according to Wikipedia, this episode aired on September 6th in 1997.
Oh.
Did that year ever really happen? That was a Saturday, according to my computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Saturday morning. I kind of like the equivalent of a Saturday morning cartoon. Yeah.
Okay, but then season 3, episode 2 aired on September 8th, which was a month, like the following Monday.
I know. I remember once I was doing something with the Star Wars podcast, and I forget whether it's IMDb or Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia has the dates wrong. You might have to go to IMDb.
Gotcha. Yeah,
because Wikipedia is just they're pulling their information from somewhere, and it's not right sometimes. Or it could be the other way around. It could be IMDb that's wrong. But I would tend to believe IMDb first over Wikipedia.
Everybody's wrong.
That's the easiest way to look at it. Don't trust anything on the internet.
Also on the Wikipedia page for this, it says that the main antagonist of this episode is the praying mantis. Which we
okay.
Yeah, which we clearly know is not true.
This is kind of like, I can, if you were excited for this as a kid, like not Rob you, but just in general, and you saw this, I that's the weird thing about Goosebumps, that even to this day I can't figure out who it was for. Like, I get the books because the books like would show up like what, once a month, once every 2 months, right?
I think so. Yeah, at a pretty regular schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, oh, it's like a monthly thing. It's like, oh, the latest Goosebumps is here, and like, oh, I like this. But there's a different thing reading a scary book versus like watching a scary program.
Mm-hmm.
Like watching a scary program in like April is the stupidest thing in the world because there's no weight to it. Like that's the thing about it's like that's, you know, it might just be me and the Monstober thing. Like, yes, you can watch scary movies any time of year. Like anytime I hear about like a scary movie being released outside of like August, September, or October, I'm like, what the hell were they thinking? I don't know. I just can't see watching something like Goosebumps. I think that's very clear too, and we'll get into it with the haunted mask situation, is that Goosebumps, I think, was starting to trend away from like a very specific identity that maybe it was getting labeled with.
Oh, interesting.
I think they wanted to go like move further away from a I don't want to say Tales from the Dark Side, but like I guess it's kind of like what happened with Tales from the Dark Side, where like that and again we'll get into more of the comparisons when we talk about the next segment. But like the first episode is a very pulpy horror premise, pulpy, scary, spooky premise, and then as the series would go on, it became more and more like Twilight Zone-esque.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where that's not my cup of tea. Like, even though, like some of these morals, I like it when, I think I said even last year, I like it when these stories end with a moral. I just don't like a story ending with a twist for the sake of ending with a twist.
Sure, yeah, understandable.
A twist without a proper, like, build-up is just nothing. It's just that. It's there for the sake of being there. Didn't we ever ask M. Night Shyamalan what he thinks of Goosebumps? Like, he had to have been watching, even though, like, he was a filmmaker at this time, he had to be watching this stuff and just taking copious notes, being like, oh, yes, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like one of those things. I would imagine him like I don't know, coming back from like making like an independent movie, it being on TV like one night, him being like, This seems like in his wheelhouse, like something he would probably appreciate.
Yeah.
And he'd never admit it though.
Yeah, it makes me think of remember Lady in the Water? His movie?
Did that movie ever happen, Rob?
That's a good question. But isn't the premise of that movie that like the whole thing is like they have a book and the book guides them to what to do with the Lady in the Water?
It's something like that. I've never seen that movie entirely.
Okay.
I know it's like what the movie critic played by Shyamalan's like the hero of it, and that's like the joke, like, oh, the movie the critic is the bad guy. Paul Giamatti's like the critic and he's the bad guy. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think I only saw that once, and it was a mess. But it makes me think it's right up Goosebumps like Goosebumps type alley, where it's like, oh, this book is going to guide us through this, mystical process we have to encounter, or some nonsense like that.
Yeah, the Shock Street, no thanks.
So I do have to point out at the end of this episode, I think they did it for like the first few episodes of season 3. The end credits has like an upbeat remixed version of the theme song. So we'll have to play that. Get a clip in, maybe play it in reverse later, because we played the original theme song in reverse. I'm sure that as soon as the credits started to roll on this one, you just stopped it, right?
I didn't even get the credits, Rob. My thing just cuts off at the like the moment like a name shows up.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think. I'm pretty sure like the moment I get like bump, 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 and then it's like cut off.
Okay, well, interesting.
And Rob, we know what we're playing over the end credits of this episode. You know what we're playing over the end credits of this. And it ain't no Goosebumps theme song.
I am become Carly Beth.
God bless Carly Beth.
Okay, well, if you had nothing else to say about Shocker on Shock Street, those were our 2 season 3 episodes. And now we are taking it all the way back to the pilot of Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask. Zach, I'll throw it over to you. I'm guessing, by process of elimination, this is the one you enjoyed.
Folks, like every Monstober season, I have to suffer through Goosebumps. Like I said last year, I was never particularly keen on Goosebumps. And even last year's episodes, I had really no memory of them. It wasn't until I listened to last year's episode, which I did this morning, that I kind of like, oh yeah, I liked like the Jack-o'-lanterns one, because I know I completely forgot about the fact that we have Super Drew and the Zodiac Killer. Like I forgot about that, like completely spaced on that. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that. I it's coming back to me now. And I'm like, oh, I get it. And like, okay, it was cute. I know why that resonated with me. And so, but again, that was today. So when I got all these episodes, like, I don't know, like a couple days ago or a week ago, I'm like, okay, I better watch all these. Because at this point, Rob had kind of like gone off the grid for like a week. Didn't know when he was coming back. So maybe prepared. He says, Zach, can we record tomorrow? And so I'll have all my bases covered. And so, okay, let me watch these.
Zach gets a frantic phone call at 2 a.m. I'm ready for Goosebumps.
More like a frantic like text message / voice message in Dropbox. Zack, we're recording now.
A 2-hour voice message where I'm just like, okay, I did this on my own. You fill in the blanks.
No, that's a great way to record a Cinemoddities episode. So no, it's like I put it on, and the order that these were given to me were the chronological release with The Haunted Mask, Shock Street, and then Not Ryan Gosling episode.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and I'm watching it, and it's like, okay, it's playing out like your typical, or actually how it begins is with the introduction by R.L. Stein.
Yes, one of the reasons I hate the episode.
Okay, for the record, tipping my hand a little prematurely, I absolutely love this. The whole episode. Like, this was great. This isn't just like my normal, like, patronizing Rob, where I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's good. This was, like, genuinely great. Like, this was up my alley. Like, this checked all the boxes for me. I enjoyed it, like, on an authentic level. It's campy to hell. It's goofy. It's got that great Halloween-like air. I think even last year I mentioned it, like, oh, like, there's a very specific type of, like time of the day of Halloween where, like, it's about to end, but you have the last few, like, breaths of Halloween of the season. And Rob's like, what? I've never heard this before, but I'm glad you're getting this vibe from the show. And this episode did a fantastic job of just like encapsulating everything that's so great about Halloween beyond just like the events of whatever her name is, whose name I should remember.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Excuse me.
Carly Beth.
And how the episode begins with the introduction by R.L. Stein, and I love how matter-of-fact it is, because it reminds me of like a combination of like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and like Jonathan Frakes' Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction, because it adds a grounded layer to it. It makes it look like it could happen. And I guess it's less Beyond Belief because Beyond Belief happened years after this. Mm-hmm. But like it has that like Alfred Hitchcock Presents vibe to it. You have the creator being the host, and he's the foundation for all this. And I'm like, that's great. I'm like, why isn't this in every episode? This is a very easy way. You pay R.L. Stein for like a weekend's worth of work, and you add like a whole layer of just like authenticity for every episode. It's great.
Good evening. Do you believe in ghosts? Of course not. I knew you didn't. Noise is the mortal enemy of good motion picture making and television broadcasting. That is why I hired this particular house. It is deathly quiet. Most of the time. And its reputation for being haunted keeps away the curious. The shifting of scenery also seems to be better here. The human element has been removed. So, if you will just lean back and relax, I'll tell you a little ghost story. Please don't hesitate to turn out your lights. I'm sure the warm glow from the picture tube will be sufficient to melt all your fears of the dark.
Hello, I'm R.L. Stein. I write the Goosebumps books. In a few minutes, you're going to see one of my favorite stories come alive. The Haunted Mask is a frightening Halloween story about a girl named Carly Beth. The horror begins when Carly Beth puts on the evil haunted mask, and it ends when she discovers there is nothing more powerful than the love of her family and friends. What's so scary about that? You'll see. Viewers beware. You're in for a scare.
And of course, they did away with that like really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And even when he's like coming out, you have like all the masks from the episode there. Very Alfred Hitchcock Presents, because he would do his thing and he'd talk about like I think I remember it mostly from him like doing the promos for Psycho, where it's like, this is a house, this is a bathroom.
Yeah.
Horrible things have happened here. They're almost too horrible to talk about. When in that moment, I can't even do it. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And even though R.L. Stein's not like, in preparation for this episode, I listened to a podcast episode about this episode. I'm sorry, about the Haunted Mask.
Mm-hmm.
And they're even like, R.L. Stein, the man charisma forgot. And I'm like, sure, R.L. Stein has no personality, but he's trying here. And I'm like, great. I'm just, like, in the first 30 seconds, I'm sold. He introduces us to the characters, very similar to what Alfred Hitchcock would do with Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and we get Carly Beth and her friend. Is her friend's name Sabrina or Selena?
I think it's Sabrina.
Okay, Sabrina. It's Carly Beth and Sabrina going to a pumpkin patch to pick a pumpkin, and the two school bullies are playing a trick on Carly Beth, which they do every single chance they get.
Yep.
And they come out of the ground, they had themselves buried in the ground at the pumpkin patch, come out of the ground and scare Carly Beth to the point where she runs away, and the friend comes up to her and they have a little kind of a one-on-one moment where they're like, Carly Beth, you shouldn't be so scared. And she's like, I know, but these guys always get to me. And I'm like, if people are burying themselves underground to scare me, that is indicative of a much larger problem for not just Carly Beth, but for the bullies too, because there is a deep sociopathic connection they have with Carly Beth. And I'm like, okay, whatever. That.
I think they mention it later when she's scaring them, and they're like, we were just tormenting Carly Beth because we want to run train on her.
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. That does happen. It's like, oh. Yeah, it's really weird.
Before you keep going, I think I love that you love this episode, Zach, and I can't wait to get into it more. But I think part of my dislike of this episode is in the story, because I never liked this book either, and we'll get into more of that, I think, when we go through the story. But I have to mention, I totally get what you're saying about the reminiscence of Hitchcock Presents with the introduction we have from R.L. Stein. But you know me. I think our audience knows me. You cannot get my attention with anybody in any format going, this story starts when someone makes a bad decision and ends when they realize love is the strongest power in the universe. Fuck that introduction, man. I hate that so much.
What you're saying is Christopher Nolan based Interstellar off that opening.
I think that everybody who thinks they're writing something deep that uses the word love should stop it. It's not a deep idea, okay? Even the Flaming Lips. I love the Flaming Lips, but that's half their songs are about how love is so important. Give me anything different. I don't need 6 albums telling me how love is important, okay? It's done. We get it.
Is anybody else hearing the Beatles' All You Need Is Love right now? Or is it just me?
That is a good song.
Okay, so if I'm left to do this, we'll be here for another 3 hours as I break down literally every single moment of this episode. So, Rob, will you please tell the audience, the listeners, what happens over this episode? Because I will go on for 7 hours about it.
Okay.
Left unchecked.
Okay, so first thing everybody needs to know, we've already introduced 2 characters. We got Carly Beth, our main character, and her friend Sabrina. I never knew this until I did my research last night. Carly Beth is played by Catherine Long. Her friend Sabrina is played by Catherine Short. Catherine is spelt the same way in both of their names. So we have Long and Short coming at us hard and fast at the beginning of this episode. And Carly Beth is scared. Sabrina says, "You didn't get your pumpkin."
You didn't get your pumpkin. You didn't get your pumpkin. You didn't get your pumpkin.
You didn't get your pumpkin.
The scene changes. Carly Beth eats a sandwich full of worms. Carly Beth doesn't understand why her mother makes plaster of Paris busts of herself. Carly Beth destroys a duck costume while she's sobbing. And then she has literally the scene in Mandy with the cult leader where he's like sobbing in the mirror and then goes, I'm never going to doubt myself again. And he gets all serious. That was inspired by the scene where she destroys the duck costume.
Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Oh, tell me what to do. 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 Tell me. Ever doubt yourself.
Because Carly Beth is literally crying her eyes out, ripping up this duck costume, and then she like goes to the mirror and she's like, I'm gonna be scary. Carly Beth steals the mask from the shopkeeper, which is one of the only differences from the book. She buys it in the book. I don't know why they made her steal it in the show. And she has a moment of regret. She literally steals it from the guy and stops like 10 feet out of the store and goes, what am I doing? Oh, right, I'm being evil. And then she puts on the mask. She menaces so many people that a woman says she's going to call the cops.
No, that is... Okay, pause. But prior to the mask is fantastic. When she puts the mask on, goes out like quote unquote trick-or-treating, it might be the greatest moment in history because it is like hammy to like the umpteenth degree. Nicolas Cage is watching this and took copious notes as well. And it's like, so this is how it's done. Because there's a point where there's two kids with like a costume. One of the kids has like, oh God, like it's the most like complex Halloween costume for someone under the age of like 20, where it's like a dummy head and he has like fake shoulders and he has like, oh God, like a black like cloth draped over it. And she like tears apart his Halloween costume. Well, like she's going 100. It's like, this is the children's version of Jim Carrey's The Mask. She's going like all out.
Oh yeah.
She's like,
somebody stop me.
oh, the voice is great. Oh, it's fantastic. Like I would do an impersonation of it here. Yeah, I could not do it justice. Like with the amount of clips that we're going to have to play here, there's a very real possibility that we insert the entire 40 minutes into this episode, so you two can like just relish in the beauty that is the sketch. I'm not sketch.
Hey Noah, stay away! No. Who are you? Why don't you guess? Mom, help! Help! Stupid, it's me, it's Carly Beth.
In this episode.
And everybody take a shot every time somebody says Carly Beth.
We'll get to that, because that is the crowning achievement of this episode.
You're blacking out in 5 minutes if you play that drinking game.
You will. Okay, we'll get to that in due time. So go back to what Rob was saying. That she sits there, like she goes on like the tear to end all tears, to the point where like Sabrina, she goes to Sabrina's house, and it's like, that is such a scary mask, Carly Beth. At this point, my brain is trying to repress me saying it because I've heard it so many times. And it's like, she's like, oh God, it looks so real. And it's like, oh God, it feels like it's real. And they go trick or treating to like the first house, and it's like the kid, like the woman opens the door, and the mom is like maybe like early 30s. She is a young mom, and the kids answer the door with the mother, and they're like, they ask Sabrina, "What are you supposed to be, like a rat?" And she's like, "No, I'm a cat." And they're like, and the other kid has the like when it comes to like kid delivery, and we've talked about some horrible children actors. This is like the worst / greatest child actor delivery of a line ever.
Oh yeah.
I don't like that one. Too scary. And I'm just like peeing myself at that delivery. And it's like, oh my God, it's like too scary. And Carly Beth just goes like on this like epic like this like rant, and it's like just starts like doing it, and the mother goes, "Don't do that, you're scaring her." And like Carly Beth just goes up, just doubles down to the point where, like Rob said, the mother goes, "Get out of here, I'm calling the cop."
Trick or treat.
Oh, now that's what I call a scary mask.
What are you supposed to be, a giant hamster?
No, cat.
I don't like the other one, Mom. Too scary.
Oh, it's just a funny mask, hon. Don't be afraid.
You better watch what you say to me if you know it's good for you.
Listen, don't frighten her like that. She's just a little girl.
Oh, well, isn't that too bad?
Hey, cut it out.
And if you don't stop talking, you'll get what's coming to you, too.
You tell your sick little friend that I'm going to call the police.
She's not really like that. Coming back, wait up.
Yeah, because I think two of the last two lines are legitimate threats. Like, doesn't Carly Beth, like, she leans down. Well, Carly Beth is, the actor can't be more than like 15, 16 years old, leans down to this like 7 or 8 year old kid and goes, "You better watch what you say or you're going to have to deal with me," or something like that. And it's like, that's like a legitimate threat to say.
Oh, it's glorious. It's glorious. But the best part is, and I don't know, and this is the beauty, I think I've said it numerous times on Cinemoddities, is that line of whether intentional or unintentional, and that's where the pure Cinemoddities come from. That is like where you get the mother of pearl. It's right in that really like hairline crevice is where the gems come out. Because what did the director on set that day tell was it Catherine Short?
Catherine Long is Carly Beth, yeah.
Okay, Catherine Long is Carly Beth. What did the director tell Carly Beth that day of shooting? Because like it is the most ham-fisted performance I've ever seen in a child actor. Like I've never seen a child actor ham it up as much, but like not without tipping it over to where it becomes like, oh, this kid actor is doing too much.
Yeah, So I don't know if you read this, Zach, but in some of my research for this, apparently in one of R.L. Stein's memoirs, not memoirs, but biographies or stories about himself, he said that while he was on set for this episode, it being the pilot, that the director wanted to use fake worms for the worm in the sandwich scene. And apparently Catherine Long was like, "No, we need to do real worms." And it took 12 takes and 12 worms.
I did see that, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I read that, I like to imagine that on the set for this back in the 90s, a similar, if not identical circumstance happened to the same thing that happened in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Leonardo DiCaprio and the little girl, where it's Catherine Long sitting there being like lecturing all the other actors, telling them about how to method act.
This is our job. We have to do it perfectly. We have to live up to the audience's expectations. So yeah, I think Catherine Long was just like, I am this mask.
And somewhere Quentin Tarantino was taking copious notes, being like, in 25 years, I'm going to make this into a character in one of my movies.
Oh, great connection.
Oh, it's fabulous. Oh, this episode is, again, perfect. It's everything I want out of life, and just anything, not just a Cinemodity, everything, because it hammers on every single point. Even the fact that I had to watch it in like 240p, like pixelated quality. Like, I cannot wait to find this in HD. That's how excited I am for this.
Oh, it's so good. I need worse quality. This was actually the episode that I had that note for, that this is what Goosebumps should look like.
Rob's like, degrade the quality even more. I need to put it on a VHS tape and then copy it over a couple of times.
Yeah, I think from now until next year, I'm just going to be continuously copying this file back and forth from hard drive to hard drive, and it'll lose a little bit of quality every time.
Oh boy. So yeah, that's like the Carly Beth thing. I'll let you continue the summary, but yeah, her performance with the mask when she's like hamming it up. 'Cause I know a couple points she starts to get like scared and stuff. And that's fine too. But like when she's hamming it up, yeah, it's delicious. Like it is the most deliciously over the top performance by a child actor I've ever seen.
Yes, yeah, I did enjoy that. It's definitely very hammy, and it was good fun. But of course, Carly Beth, she's menacing people. She eventually finds the bullies that have been scaring her forever. She scares them. They say that they were scaring her because they wanted, like I said, they wanted to run train on her. Carly Beth doesn't care. She's completely enveloped by the mask. As she's continuing to scare them, the plaster of Paris head that she has starts to talk and saying, "Help me," and Carly Beth even gets freaked out, or the mask gets freaked out, the haunted mask. I don't know, whatever persona she is.
Something gets, well, that's the thing too, that there is, okay, because I had to share this with Rob, is that somebody did like a classic YouTube thing I've talked about where like people do like retrospectives, and there's actually no shortage of retrospectives or podcast episodes on this episode of Goosebumps. And the person who I watched kind of like, I don't want to say they ruined it for me, but they did a really good job analyzing the episode.
Okay.
Because even as you're watching this, and we'll delve into this more after we run through the summary, is that depending on what sort of mental state or how much of a grasp the mask has on Carly Beth, is that how articulated it is. Because obviously the earlier she puts it on, it's very clearly a mask. But during certain parts where the more manic she gets, the more menacing she gets, the teeth actually move along with her. The mask is much more like adhere to her, like her physical body. And you can see that in just how it's just like when she moves like muscles on her face, you can see the mask move with it, where in other instances the mask doesn't do that, where she's more Carly Beth. And I'm like, that is an insane level of quality to put into a TV show, never mind one for kids, never mind with a child actor. To the point where, like, think about it, during different scenes, you're going to have to take the makeup off of Catherine Long and then reapply makeup on her. And I would imagine it probably was certain days they did this. It wasn't like they halfway through the day, because it probably took hours to put this on her. But it's like that level of just finesse for a children's show adaptation based on a book.
Yeah.
That was meant to be kind of like the dime store novel horror equivalent for children. Like there is, and that's where this guy's video kind of ruined it for me. Is that he really does analyze it as like a serious like work of like horror, and it made me really appreciate it even on a whole nother level beyond just the whole campy, just the oh good lord, just the bonkers level aspect. Because at certain points too, I was watching this, I'm like, good lord, somewhere Sam Raimi and like Bruce Campbell are watching this, being like, good lord, kid, you got it. There's a baby. There's a baby Evil Dead like remake that needs to happen. Like was it like Watchmen babies? It needs to be Evil Dead babies, and somewhere Catherine Long needed to be cast for that. Right on. But yes, go back to your summary. So yes, you have the point with different parts where the mask is like taking control of her, other parts where she has a better grasp.
Yep. The head of her talks. Carly, the mask gets freaked out. They bury the head in the cemetery. She continues to menace people, eventually finds, goes home or finds Sabrina? One of those two things?
She finds Sabrina first.
And that, like, snaps her out of her thing. She's like, Sabrina. It's like she's talking normally again, and they go home, and I think they try and get the mask off, and just like we were saying, there's that scene where she's like, these aren't my eyes. Like, my eyes aren't behind the mask anymore type of thing. And she can't get it off. There's no way to get it off. She has to go back to the shopkeeper. Just like in the book, it makes no sense. The shopkeeper out of nowhere is like, you're the only person who loves these masks, Carly Beth. You need to be one of them. And I'm like, okay, I guess we need something to happen now. And then all the masks start to float towards her, and they do They do a great, like, Courage the Cowardly Dog effect of, come with us, Carly Beth, you're one of us. And, you know, it makes me think of, like, King Ramses' curse.
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
What's your offer?
This night you will be visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last. Return the slab.
Ha! Nice try, Professor.
And then Carly Beth digs up the head and she shows it to the other masks and she's like, look at this good mask. It's not a bad mask. And everything goes back to normal. The end.
Well, okay, Rob's underselling this.
Okay, the brother puts the mask on and that does absolutely nothing in the sequel. So.
Well, yeah, but again, it's a nice little flourish to punctuate the entire thing. It's like, it's like the cycle is beginning again, which unfortunately would be the thing that would become a hallmark in. That's the sad thing with a lot of pilots. They do one thing for that specific moment, and it just gets carried on like ad nauseum. You know, it's not really applicable anymore or effective. And then again, we'll get into more specific like highlights of this. But even the ending, you go back. It's bookended by R.L. Stine, and we go back to him, and it's in the same location as him before, where he's like, it's like all the unloved one masks are behind him. He's like, oh, that wasn't too scary now, was it? I have my parents here with me. I wonder what they'll think. And it pans over to them, and it's like, it's not a freeze frame, but it's almost like that where it's an exaggerated, like, scary reaction.
Yes.
Where almost, I guess the best like way I could like relate it to something is it reminds me of like the Airheads package, or no, Sour Heads with the guy with the blown out hair and like the giant like O mouth face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, it's such a weird visual. Like it's a creepy visual, but it's not like menacing. It's creepy without being menacing. And I think that's something like maybe a whole new layer to not just like Cinemoddities, but to like Mott Stober's, like doing creepy without it being menacing.
Ah, interesting.
Because nothing like this show is not this is not like Real Scary Stories where it's trying to like paint trying to scare you out of the room.
Sure.
This show is trying to entertain you with like macabre undertones.
Yeah.
Because at no point, I didn't know this. It was I think in the podcast thing I was listening to, that apparently this was broken up into 2 different episodes.
Yep. There's part 1 and part 2. Mm-hmm.
And the part 1 ends with the part of Carly Beth like throttling Sabrina, and that's how it ends. Which I found that absolutely hysterical. That's how it ends.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Imagine watching this on like Cartoon Network in 2008, and that's how it ends. It's like, oh boy, ooh, like that's a good dark turn. Like,
is Carly Beth gonna have to choke a bitch?
Oh, it's great. Like that's, oh boy, everything about this is great. So like, okay, now that Rob broke it all down, highlighted everything that he wanted to, like the very beginning, again, the 2 kid bullies that sit there, like for some reason it comes out of nowhere, like, oh, we like Carly Beth. I knew that was back in the 90s. That was a very big thing to tell kids to explain bullying. I never understood the psychology of it. Because I remember even when I was in elementary school, I remember there was like one girl who always kind of like picked on me, and everyone would tell me like, "Oh, she likes you," and it's like a 6-7-year-old like that's. It's like if somebody likes you, why are they like? And plus, you're not at that point. I forget what Freudian stage it is, but it's like you're not looking at like the opposite sex and that sort of. Again, girls have cooties, chuties. You gotta get your chutie shot.
Yep.
Chuties coming soon. Ranch flavored chuties.
So, like, I never understood that as a thing, no, but I get it. It makes sense as, like a device in a kid's show of them. Like, I can imagine, like, a 45-year-old, like, writer trying to adapt this, being like, does that happen in the book? Do they say that they like her in the book?
I don't recall, but
I can't see that
like something. Yeah, it seems like something that, you know, that wouldn't be a focus in the book. Like, the line in the show when they're like, we only did it because we liked her, it seems so forced. Like we're saying, like an older writer was like, yeah, that's what we need to have it flow.
You need to make them sympathetic real quick. That's the problem with it's not a problem. I think it works. But that's kind of like that's why that happens. Because you need to make the bullies who've been kind of the antagonists this entire time sympathetic like on a dime. And it's effective storytelling for a 40-minute long Goosebumps adaptation.
Yeah, it's fine.
So, but again, you go back to the beginning, the bullies are just harassing her to the point where and that's the thing too, that the YouTube video guy, and I probably should link to him in the show notes because he did a really good job on this, is that like, there are some really great like psychological levels to this too, where we see Carly Beth just go through all these layers of just being like, okay, she's being harassed at school. And I think it's fair to say that it's not just bullying. Like it is like it's outside of school. No matter where she goes, these guys just have like you said, they have like a royal hard on for her. They just will not let up with her. And it goes on and on. And at one point, again, they talk about it, and obviously it's a modern day interpretation of this. It's like, oh, it's bullying, which is what it is. But it's the idea that like, oh, how would a kid like respond to that? Because this isn't like, again, this is the early mid 90s where you don't have like the sort of culture we have today. Where, like if a kid feels bullied, the first thing they're going to want to do is get retribution. And this was also back in the 90s where retribution didn't entail buying a firearm and shooting up a school. Sure. So like, oh, how are you going to get back at the kids that bully you? You're going to scare them.
Yep.
And you have that notion too, that she also does have like these weird, like even before she gets the mask, she does have these manic states where she goes from like crying to being upset to being embarrassed to like being like wanting to like forego being a child. And she's like throwing off like being a child. Like she rips up the duck costume. You have all these layers that are going on, and Catherine Long is doing a really good job selling all this.
Oh yeah,
because at no point, again, we've talked about child actors a lot in this, and the actress that plays Sabrina is horrible. I don't want to say she's horrible, but she doesn't hold a candle to Catherine Long, because the whole time you're watching this, you're not looking at it being like, oh man, this is a hammy child actor that's being told do whatever you want. This is somebody doing exactly either what they want or what somebody's telling them what they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has all those layers, and then even when she goes and gets the mask and she's looking around the shop, and we have the shop owner, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it. I forgot to do it in time for this. Is that I could have sworn that the novelty shop, is the same shop from the Tales from the Dark Side pilot.
Oh.
Where the miser has his like general store.
Yeah, interesting.
It looks like the exact same building.
Okay.
I don't know, because I can imagine like when they were doing the pilot, Tales from the Dark Side was filmed like a year before the show ever got like started. So it could just be like on a back lot somewhere, and it's just like one of those things. It's just like general store, and you fix it up however you want it for whatever like project you're working on. But it looks very similar because it has like that same sort of like glass panes. But I just thought that was an interesting comparison. And so she goes into the shop, and you do have all these masks, which is really, I'm not talking about the unloved ones, but just the other ones are just, think about it, someone had to build all those masks. And it's cool. One looks like a Chewbacca mask with sunglasses, which I found interesting. And we have the shop owner. And even though his part of the story isn't as highlighted as I probably would have liked, because his stuff is more toward the very end, the last, 8 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, when she goes back to figure out how to get the mask off, yep.
And it's very like abruptly explained, like, oh, I built all, and it's not even clearly explained, because it's like, oh, I like designed all these masks to hide my own like insecurities, and they got worse in the process to eventually the masks adopted like the inner turmoil that I fear.
Mm-hmm.
And even though like I've been able to deduce that from like watching it twice, I can't imagine an 8-year-old being like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
But that's the clever thing with this, is that that's not there in any other Goosebumps episodes that I've watched, is that this feels like an episode that was designed for both adults and children to watch.
Yeah, I think I mentioned already that this is, I think out of all the Goosebumps episodes, this is the one that is most true to the book and the source material. And I think that's one of the things that, I do get bummed out about the other Goosebumps episodes, because the books usually do have these like psychological levels, these layers of more adult themes. And this is one of the only ones that really shows them off. And those are good facets, but it's just kind of a bummer, when I love so many other books for that reason that they get shortchanged.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. It's a very similar thing that happened like Tales from the Dark Side, even though there's other episodes of that show that I liked. That the pilot was like a very, very specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the show like kind of devolves eventually into like a poor man's Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And worth pointing out too is that the Tales from the Dark Side pilot, which I loved and Rob did not like, was also a Halloween thing that involves like people getting their comeuppance.
Yep. And what was it? Parental Debt Hunger Games? What was it called?
Parental Debt Hunger Games, indeed.
Something like that, right?
Oh, that's glorious. But no, jumping a little bit ahead here, but yes, I would put this on the same par as that. A different variety,
sure,
but in the same level, just like perfect, like what I want out of like Halloween macabre entertainment. Oh, perfect! It's beautiful.
Okay, right on.
But yes, you have the whole thing with the mask. She goes and gets the mask. She like throws the money at him. I love that. It's like, here's your money. Bye.
Yeah. He's like, you can't have this mask. I'm going to take it anyway, but I'm going to throw money at you.
Love it. And like you mentioned before, it's like she runs outside and she's like, what am I doing? And she turns around to go back and he locks the door and puts the close sign out.
Yeah. It's great. It's also interesting because when she's in the shop, when she first shows up, she's like looking around. He almost gets surprised by her, it seems. And he's like, what are you doing in here? Get out of here. And I'm like, this is a store, isn't it? And she's like, I just need a mask for Halloween. It'll just be 5 minutes. And he's like, okay. As the phone's ringing, he's like, okay, get 5 minutes. And while he's on the phone, I couldn't hear too much of what he was saying, but like just as Carly Beth is going into the back room and finding all of the haunted masks that she, starts to feel and stuff, he's on the phone and he says something like, I don't care about customers.
That door is falling apart. Need this chemical. I can't go on without it. I don't care about the customers. Something.
And I'm like, what fucking store is this dude running?
Yeah, I that's because that's the weird thing too. It's like it's Halloween like afternoon. Yeah. He runs a novelty shop filled with masks, and he seems perturbed that someone wants to buy a mask that day.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Again, they're playing into a trope. Like again, it's the store shop owner that's like, get out of here. Like
he's being weird. He's being creepy.
Yeah, I get it. And there's two ways to play it. There's that way, and then there's like the over enthusiastic way where it's like, oh yes, I have everything you're looking for. Like it's that like really like it's oh god isn't there another Twilight Zone premise where it's like the idea it's like oh you don't want that mask is too scary, but I want a mask that'll scare people. Well then maybe this is the one you're looking for. It's like there's two ways to play that in the guise of like a children's show again. You learn your lesson at the end. There's only two ways to play that. There's no nuance in that role, unfortunately. And I think you do get a little bit more nuance, and it comes at the end where even like the masks like start to come after him and her, and he kind of like shields her from it for a brief second. It's like, get out of here before they get to you.
Yep.
And that's cool. Again, very easily they could have done something where he sicks them on her. Because that's one thing I was expecting too. Like, sure, she goes to him, and it's like, Mister, you need to help me. And he's like, oh, this was my plan all along. Figuring I needed the youth and innocence of a child for the ultimate mask. And it's like, no, he's not a bad guy. He's basically kind of like the extreme of what happened to her if she doesn't learn a lesson from all this. Where that if you don't stop this now, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's never going to stop. And much like, again, Rob's horrible versions that he provided me, that it wasn't until I saw the HD versions of this where you can actually see that like he has makeup on his face where it's showing that like the mask is starting to like bleed through, or I guess his inner persona is starting to bleed through his human mask. I didn't pick up on that. Then even the mask that she wears, I thought was all like bright white, and then when I watched the HD version, it has some really great like painting on it, and so all the other unloved ones masks that you don't see at all in the versions that Rob gave me, they all look like they're like white or off white, slight brown.
You don't need any of that.
You don't need that as long as they're all. As long as you can tell they're a mask. As long as
that's
you can
luxury. Zack's living a life of luxury over there.
Details in a movie, TV program. You don't need that nonsense.
No, the way that you said the two ways they could have played the shopkeeper, it was making me think of, I think, a fantastic scene we could have gotten if the shopkeeper was more of that kind of, over enthusiastic, maybe mustache twirling-esque type of, villain where he's like showing her masks. And oh God, the way you said it is perfect, because now I'm just thinking where he holds up a mask and he's like, "You should try this one, Carly Beth." Ooh, it's me. Because that's what it is. He says all these masks for him at a certain point.
It's all connected, folks. It's all somewhere the producers of Terminator 3 are once again where everybody was looking at this. Okay, come on, quick. No one's looking. The editor one day for this episode had like the runs. They had to like leave the editing bay for like an hour. Everybody just in the movie studio just perfect.
CIS brings you the face of the future. Ooh, it's me.
All of Hollywood learned something that day.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else to say. Okay, a couple other things. Again, I can't do the Carly Beth like running around on Halloween. Like that's just, it's delicious. Like it is deliciously over the top. It's everything you could ever want. And the other thing too, I think, is there's a couple of things in this that like are introduced and they go nowhere. Because at one point the mother's like, "Oh, like your father's on the phone," and I'm like, "There's a father?"
Oh, that's right.
Because today that would be like, "Oh, they're divorced," and that would be like the reason why she's so like harassed is because she doesn't have a father. Men are horrible. That if this was made today, that would be the thesis of this. Oh, all men are horrible. She's abandoned by her father. That's why she's like overly scared because she's afraid of like male harassment or just the absent like male in her life. And that
You're
leads
so
to
right.
toxic masculinity.
I'm thinking of the scene with the mother. Mother says something, it's we don't even get the scene where it's like, "Oh, your father's on the phone, he wants to talk to you." It's more like we just get the mother in the kitchen on the phone. "What do you mean you're not going to be here to take her out on Halloween?
Yep.
Why did you let her down again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those things too. 'Cause even like I'll get to this at the very end. Though, like I'm surprised they haven't tried, especially in today's day and age where everybody has a streaming service. I'm surprised there isn't a Goosebumps like revival. I'm shocked that there's nobody like considering that like the last two Goosebumps movies, especially that last one, didn't make any money. I'm convinced that like, somebody's got to be kicking the tires on this thing, being like, okay, how do we like update this for the modern age? And that's all it would be, is that sort of just like, oh God, themes and just things to be like, okay, that's the reason why the bullies are coming after her, because they hate women, because all men hate women.
They need to contact me if they want to do Goosebumps Revival, because there's only 2 check boxes: worse actors, worse quality. Done. Same stories. Just make it look worse and sound worse. It's what I need.
Rob, like, do you have a camcorder that does VHS tapes? Perfect.
Do you have the thing they filled the Blair Witch Project on?
You mean a type of camera like that? No, the exact camera left in the middle of the woods, like in West Virginia.
The one that's rusting out and moldy.
Oh boy. But yeah, that's one thing I thought was interesting. And then too, even with the brother, because the brother would be lumped into the toxic masculinity too. Because we'll have to play the audio clip here. Is I love when she's like going up to her room and the brother burst out of her room with the duck costume. Quack, 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 quack. I love that. I love the sound he's making. It's perfect. The small touch. And then another small touch I just want to mention too is like when she's like talking to herself, this is like after she's done crying, and then she like goes to ripping up the duck costume. And that's another aspect too, like the psychological thing. So she goes from like crying to like anger, like on a dime.
Oh yeah.
Like there's a very good chance that Carly Beth might eventually grow up to like murder people. Like, there's a very real possibility. Yeah.
She's the cult leader for Mandy. Absolutely.
Oh dear.
I think in the Haunted Mask 3, if it ever gets written or produced, it would definitely be Carly Beth on a bed going, "Bring me the haunted mask of Abraxas." And eating LSD.
Listening to the Carpenters.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that. Then I love how she goes from crying to anger to like, I'm going to go buy a mask. And then like before, I love this weird touch. As she continues to talk to herself, she starts to brush her hair.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I can't help but feel that that's part of the thing too, that she wants to like become scary, but she's still attached to like her human like superficiality.
Yeah, it kind of shows off that, it doesn't show off anything really here, but it emphasizes the point later of when she becomes more of the mask.
Yeah, and the fact that, again, the superficiality really is a component to her story.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I love that, too. Then we have to get back to the plaster of Paris mold of her head.
Oh, God. Mom, why did you make this? Why did I make a face mask of, like a death mask of my daughter when she's 12? 'Cause I love you, honey. And it's like, this is weird, right? No matter what family you're in, this is weird.
Because this is the part where it makes sense on paper, but it doesn't make sense in the execution of the show.
Yeah.
In that it's like, you need to have a moment, because I would imagine the book there's a moment where she carries around her like her head mask, right? Does that happen in the book?
Yeah, that happens in the book, yep.
Okay. And you need that because later on in the story, you have the whole thing where it's like, like her innocence is lost. She has the mask, the haunted mask, then she has her head mask, and she's carrying it around like essentially on a pike. Mm-hmm. I get that part. But the thing in the show that's really off-putting is that, like, they could have very easily been like, the mother's like, I was taking an arts and crafts class, and I was told to make something for Halloween. So I figured, I'd make a mask of my daughter. That, you could have done something a lot more with that. The plaster of Paris is just, like, a little too specific and off-putting. Like, and I get why they did, because it is meant to be off-putting. I get it. It makes sense. It makes sense in that sort of just, like, context. Because they say, like, the mother says, be careful, it's plaster of Paris, it's fragile. And then I'm like, there's going to be a point in this where she breaks it, and that's going to be her losing her identity or her former self.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point when she's, like, going around the Halloween screaming at people, she drops it, and we very specifically hear a cracking sound.
Oh, yeah.
But then I'm like, and as I was watching this, I'm like, there goes the mask. And then she picks it up, and it's fine.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yep.
And I'm like, what's the point in saying what it's made of if it's not going to have any payoff later on in the story?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never gotten that. Yeah, I didn't. I remember this. That was one of the reasons we haven't gotten to the full reason why I didn't really enjoy this book or this story. But that was one of the things even in the book that didn't really make sense to me, where it's just like they were shoehorning in this symbol of love to come up later on.
Yeah, and that's another part too that really doesn't work the more you analyze it. Like, it's a symbol of love, and that's the weird thing though, is that, like, I know it's a kid's show, you need to have the love, compassion element of it though, but I think it's more of the idea like, it's a, and again, they're being concise because it's a children's show. I can't attack them too much for this though. Mm-hmm. But it should have been a little bit more refined to maybe not love, but maybe it's like a tie to your former self that's birthed from someone you love. And that, yes, that's a little wordy and a little too crude sounding. But that's what it should have been, because the mask is a little too, disturbing.
Yeah,
and that's why they should have. And I get it. They want the mask to be disconcerting to kids. It's meant to be creepy, but not like menacing. But they should have made it because, again, think about any sort of mask of a person, especially one that we're seeing that's the focal point of the entire episode, is going to be off-putting solely for just like the element of the uncanny valley. Any sort of replica of a human being is always going to have an uncanny valley aspect to it.
Yep.
And that's why I think they should have maybe moved away a little bit more from that.
Interesting point. Yeah.
And make it a little bit more, again, you can still make it odd, but just not as, because you do need that weird sort of like balancing act where it has to be weird because it talks and moves a couple of points throughout this.
Yeah, because it becomes more of Carly Beth than Carly Beth is Carly Beth.
Yes. And that's why I'm surprised at the point where they have the mask talking and just like digitally like superimpose her head on top of it.
I totally like forgot about that. For some reason, usually when I watch, as I said last year, and I still do every October, I plow through all of Goosebumps. This is definitely Haunted Mask 1 and 2, or one of the episodes I'll put on later at night, and if I fall asleep during them, I still count them as watched. I totally forgot about her plaster of Paris head talking in that one scene, and I was actually like, oh, wow, that's an interesting layer.
Yeah, and I get it. It makes sense. But the thing, too, is that, like, again, there's a lot of this that not that it doesn't connect, but a lot of it just being inserted to be creepy for the sake of being creepy, is that earlier on the mask winks at her, or I'm sorry, the plaster of Paris head winks at her. And if that thing wink at me, and I think that's cool because the first time I was watching, I didn't even pick up on that. And then you watch it the second time, you're like, oh, there it is. But it's like, oh, so like you're introducing a supernatural element of the story before like the meat of the story is even taking place.
Yes. Okay.
So it's like, oh, is this just a really like, again, I don't know. And that's why maybe at the very end it would have made more sense if the mask had its own voice instead of Carly Beth.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they kind of like did a mix where it's like part her more, a little bit more also or more of the Carly Beth, where they mix those two together. And then at the very end with the brother putting on the mask, he maybe does. It's the same sort of mixing with the audio of the two voices.
They do that. If I remember correctly, that is a point of the book, because in the book, when she has the mask on, her voice isn't like that shrill, creepy thing. It's actually like deep and very different. Mm-hmm. And then in the end of the book, the brother puts the mask on and he says like, "How do I look in your mask?" And it's supposed to be that same voice. So, so they tried to go for that in the book, which still does not connect to the sequel in the book, which is stupid as hell. But there's like errands of that there.
Okay. Because, yeah, I did in my research for this, I did see it. They did a follow-up with Catherine Long. And I'm like, oh, man, I get to see more Carly Beth. I
think she's in it.
Yeah, she is. I saw her, and I'm like, oh, thank God. They got more Carly Beth.
But it's a different mask, and it follows one of the bullies instead of her.
Yeah, I saw that. But Sabrina's still there. But, again, all that matters is that it's Carly Beth.
Carly Beth, yeah. So tune in next year when we do the Haunted Mask Part 2.
We have to do that.
Well, yeah, I think we're gonna keep it going. You know, we had Say Cheese and Die and Say Cheese and Die Again to connect these 2 years. This is our guide into next year. We have another sequel, and probably next year we'll do Monster Blood Part 1. So the following year we could do Monster Blood Part 2.
Rob mispronounced that when he said trilogy.
Oh God. Oh, that's going to be the Goosebumps bonus episode.
Oh no.
Exactly. Trilogy episode, no. That's what I'm saying.
All right. So yeah, no, I absolutely love this. But the thing I picked up on first, before I got into any really the more like horror macabre elements of this, is that I'm watching it and we're just barely at the pumpkin patch aspect of the story.
Okay.
And I'm like, how many times have they said the name Carly Beth?
You didn't get your pumpkin, Carly Beth.
And I'm like, okay, I have to keep track of this now. So I'm sitting there and I'm keeping like track on my hands. I'm like, okay, like it's 40 minutes long. I'm like, okay, there's no way they say it like more than maybe like a half a dozen times.
It's just like, me, Carly Beth.
You don't have to impersonate, because at this point we will have inserted that like 50 times at this point, the supercut. That's going to be another merman. It's going to be Carly Beth. Along with Sergeant Candy, we're going to have Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth, you.
Carly Beth. It's Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth, you.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. That Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. And Carly Beth. Just
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. What is Carly Beth? Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Because and after the pumpkin patch, I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep track of how many times they say this. And to make a long story short, I got to like 10 times and I'm just like, I lost track.
It's excessive, to say the least.
To the point where, as like yesterday, I had some free time. And I'm like, I have to bring up this aspect of the story or part of the discussion. So I went back, rewatched the entire episode with Audacity recording it, and took notes of timestamps of every single time Carly Beth's name is uttered.
Rob, and I guess I also have to say that Zack then sent me a message. It was a text? No, it was a Facebook message, I think, where he said, check Dropbox for possibly the greatest thing I've ever done. And
Yes.
I had no clue what to expect. This was before I had watched the Goosebumps episodes myself, because I put it off as long as I can because it's technically not Monstober as we're recording this. And then I listened to it. I threw it on when I was listening to some other music that people had sent me, and it starts, and I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? And then, if anybody remembers my supercut of Wonder Woman, it's that on steroids, but for Carly Beth. It's fantastic.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Excuse me.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth, you.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. You. Carly Beth. 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 Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. What is Carly Beth? Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
I went through, and it took me, I don't know why, because it's sad to say that I wasn't the first person with this idea. Somebody actually has a super cut of every single time Carly Beth's name is said, and it's on YouTube. And it has like 80,000 views.
Oh, this makes me think of too. Remember we played the clip of when we were talking about Harold Perrineau and Claus? I was like, all he does in the second season of Lost is scream Walt, and there's like that 2-minute supercut of him just screaming, Walt! Don't ever talk about my boy again.
Yeah,
this is great.
I was very disappointed because what you've heard, if not already, you've heard it by now, is I did it. That's my own supercut, but somebody actually has the entire thing on YouTube. I'm like,
nice.
In a way, I'm kind of delighted that I'm not the only person, but at the same time, though, it's like, goddamn, like 70,000 plus times people watch that episode and were like, wow, they say Carly Beth a lot.
Oh yeah.
But it's glorious. So my version, I love my my remix with My Name Is.
Oh, it really is fantastic. And I'm glad you picked up on some of like the stupidest repetitions of her name. Like what? She goes to see the shopkeeper and he's like, what is your name? Carly Beth? Carly Beth. And it's like, why? Why would you repeat that?
Excuse me, Rob. It's Carly Beth.
Teeth chattering and everything.
Oh yeah. Somewhere we have to, much like Gymnastics Girl from the Amanda Show, we have to find Catherine Long and be like, did you win something for this? Like, can we retroactively like nominate you for an Emmy?
I read on a few sites that she won a Gemini Award for her performance, whatever the hell that is.
Whatever it is, it's not a strong enough award. She deserves better.
It's an award given by the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television.
Fine, but it's not good enough.
Yeah, I'm with you. We got to get her. We got to. I will extend an invitation right now to Catherine Short and Catherine Long. We want you as a team to discuss this episode on our podcast.
Yes.
That's all it takes, right? Who do we? Oh, I guess we should say, who do we tweet?
Who do we tweet?
R.L. Stein.
I looked at IMDb. Catherine Long hasn't done anything like almost 20 years. Like the last like credit she has is like 2002.
Oh, so she's primed and ready for a podcasting comeback.
I do. That's on after the Jenny Nicholson disc. The next big thing we get is Catherine Long is on the Cinemoddities podcast. Remember the girl from the Goosebumps pilot? We got her.
Oh, Short and Long, get on here. We need you.
All right, Rob. So if you want to guess, how many times is Carly Beth uttered throughout this two-parter?
Okay, I'm gonna go 47.
Higher.
Oh, it's really higher.
Higher.
Holy shit.
Not much higher, but it's higher.
62?
No. 52 times at least.
Oh,
and I might have missed one or two.
That was a good Price is Right guess I had.
That was close. Because the point when all the unloved one masks start floating and start like chiming in, being like Carly Beth, you lose. Sometimes I couldn't tell if they're just like muttering a chant or if they are saying her name. I know at least 3 or 4 times they say her name, but I think there's maybe 1 or 2 others in there that I couldn't really kind of pick out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Stay with us, Carly Beth.
Yes. So with that being said, this is like a 42-minute long show.
We want to run train on you, Carly Beth.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, her name is literally said over once per minute.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That's a great metric.
This is the time codes. Her name is said at the 12-second mark, 15-second mark, 1 minute and 10 second, 1 minute 44th second. Like there's points where like I couldn't write it down fast enough. Like her name at one point is said like 4 or 5 times in the span of 10 seconds.
We need grant money to study the velocity of Carly Beth.
And I guess that's my final question for this episode is why did they feel the need to say her name that many times?
I don't know. I don't remember it being said that many times in the book. Like, her name had no special importance in the book, as it doesn't in this episode. It's just her name. It could have been Carly. It could have been Beth. Why does it have to be Carly Beth? Nobody knows. So, yeah, we just got to bask in the glory of it.
It's a Cinemoddities mystery.
It's yes. We haven't had one of those in a while. At least I don't think we've labeled one in a while as such. But it indeed is. We'll have to get Short and Long on here and ask him about it.
I also want to, on top of Short and Long, I want the editor of this episode because he could have very easily taken out any of these. An editor can think about it because all you got to do is take out some of the names. You don't need to have the entire audio. Like I would imagine a lot of this was, I don't want to say ADR'd, but probably something like that where you just cut that bit of the audio out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like you don't need it that many times. Never mind. Like imagine like you're editing this and you're like giving it like you're not testing it, but like you're watching run-throughs of it. It's like, do we really need to say that name that many times?
And someone with the cigar in the background is like, throw it in 2 more times in that scene for good measure.
What's that guy doing?
Carly Beth.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. It's like, who's that guy? He's in the background with the cigar. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Yeah.
It's insane, this Carly Beth.
Oh dear Lord. But yeah, it's delightful. This was prime cut, like much like what we're gonna be talking about next week, which is going to be one of like if you thought it was bad this week, folks, next week's gonna be it's gonna be like a thrill ride.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yes, but this was delightful Halloween Cinemoddities content that I could not have asked for. If I thought the Jack-o'-lanterns episode was good, this was stellar.
Right on. I'm glad you dig it. That's, like I said last year, when you gave me 60,000 hours of unsolved mysteries, I said it was all going to be worth it as long as I found one I loved, and I did. And I'm glad you have some Goosebumps you love, because that's what there's always that corn in the crap, right? And I'm here to help you sort through it a year at a time.
This is like a piece of gold. It's like a gold nugget in the crap.
Okay. Like I said, I don't really care for this story. I did enjoy watching this more than I have in a long time, I think, that we did it for this episode, and for a lot of the reasons we've been discussing. But, I think this is one of the ones where I'm with you, Zach. When you were saying before about Goosebumps, where it's always a bummer when there's just a twist for twist's sake. It's just, whoa, something was different. Haha, metanoia. And it's like, isn't that kooky? I'm with you. Sometimes that's bad. I would take a bad twist any day over love wins.
Oh, dear Lord.
I couldn't stand this when I read this book as a kid. That's probably part of the reason I didn't like. I've grown to hate that trope so much. But that's all this is to me. Because what is it? There's no villain. It's just a mask. She puts a mask on and it makes her be menacing.
But Rob, the villain is her own insecurities.
I would be more into that if she couldn't quickly cure her insecurities because she knows her mother loves her.
But she doesn't know. That's the problem, is that throughout the entire episode, whether it be through Sabrina, who kind of, we didn't talk about Sabrina kind of like at one point, like like laughs with the bullies. And then
True,
even the whole
yeah.
thing, her brother picks on her. Her mother has this weird sort of like interpretation of her, this kind of like ugly, disfigured like version of her. And that's what it is that it's the fact that like, oh, these things that are imperfect aren't bad. They define me, make me unique, who they are, make me who they are. And that's the whole point of this, is that it's not just, it's much like the Tales from the Dark Side pilot, in that like, oh, there's a core message here, but all the Halloween like goofy stuff or the Halloween set decoration and just the macabre stuff is just dressing for that overall message. And I think that's why something like the pilot resonates so much more than like later episodes for people. Is that you? Yes, Rob is a sociopath. We should point that out. Rob's the wrong person to be commenting on this sort of thing. It's kind of like bringing a blind person to the art gallery. It's like they're not really giving you the best perspective on what's going down. But I think
that's fair. I'm not denying that. You know, I have absolutely no empathy for actors in front of a camera. That's totally true.
Well, yes, that too. But I think even in real life, remember, this is the same person that was feeding cats cigarettes at one point. Like, that's what I mean, though. Like, Rob's not the right person to be critiquing a story based on human emotions. Like, I'm pretty sure at the end of Cinemoddities, how many years from now, we're going to realize that Rob's like the Barracuda guy, and I rip his head off, and it's like there's like little sparks and wires sticking out. That's the ultimate joke on me.
Piranha person, yes.
Yes, Rob is the piranha person. That's what I mean, though. I think that's what helps these things resonate. There's a reason why I would imagine that there's a supercut for Carly Beth, and there's not a supercut for Shock Street.
That I will definitely agree with you on a larger scale. Why this one? Because I mentioned at the beginning, whenever I say to mention Goosebumps to somebody, this is the one they'll always latch on to. This is the one everybody remembers. And I totally believe and agree with you what you're saying. People remember this one because this one had the most heart, the most effort put into it, the most care put into it of any Goosebumps episodes. So totally understandable. When you get down to the item of myself, then we get into the discrepancies, of course. Yes. But everything I hear you completely. You know, there's a reason this one gets so much attention, and it's definitely earned. You know, like I said before, this is the one that's most close to the actual source material, to the book, and they do it fantastically. And like I said, I only wish they could have done that for more Goosebumps.
Yes, that's what I mean. If every Goosebumps, this is why when I hear about things like Goosebumps, and again, like Tales from the Dark Side, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Mm-hmm.
There are those like handful of episodes which really do kind of like get to the core of what the show should be. And it's like everything in any sort of entertainment. They're great episodes, there's so episodes, and there's bad episodes.
Yeah.
And you do need those clunkers like Shock Street in order to really appreciate the good ones like The Haunted Mask.
Especially as your season premieres, you know?
Oh, well, that's its own thing, too. Again, much like Tales from the Dark Side, the pilot really sets kind of like the mood for the rest of the series going forward. And unfortunately, this show just eventually devolves into just poor man's Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm. How fast can we write these stories into screenplays? How quickly can we produce them? Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. And that's what I don't even think, too. I think even though, yes, The Haunted Mask has a lot going on it, I think there are ways to emulate that same sort of just like the air, the themes, the mood. And that's a big part of it, too, is that like you watch the parts where it's trick-or-treating and you firmly believe that, much like the exact opposite of Shock Street, where you watch it, you're like, oh, this is very clearly like an amusement park, like faux movie set. Mm-hmm. Whereas with trick-or-treating, that felt like October 31st at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And that's something that's not, it's not that it's impossible to do, but I would imagine if you're a filmmaker and you're told, okay, which would be harder to do? Find a real life movie set or a fake movie set and shoot something there and make it look like to what you have to make it look like, or just make a residential neighborhood feel like October 31st. Mm-hmm. And all that takes is a bunch of kids, just point them in different directions and just have a bunch of like leaves like rolling around.
Yeah, exactly. Put some lights on houses. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's as goofy as, it's funny, as goofy as that segment is of Carly Beth running around with her really like, like her witch's cackle voice with the mask in her head. And it's weird. We even talk about her outfit. She has her overall, her overall still with her little striped red and white shirt. I mean, all she has is a cape and the mask. That's it. And I remember the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh, they couldn't give her like a real costume or anything. And the second time I'm rewatching it, I'm like, that's great, because that's exactly what a kid would do. A kid would find a mask and just like find like a black cape laying around, like in a box of other like Halloween decorations at home. And that's what they do. It's not like over the top like Barracuda Man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, bravo, Goosebumps. And much like last year, I asked Rob this question. Rob, are there any other episodes of Goosebumps like The Haunted Mask?
Well, I'm pretty sure I sent you The Girl Who Cried Monster last year.
That was on the jack-o'-lanterns.
Yes.
And even though the jack-o'-lanterns is very similar to this, which I've kind of remember, it's funny, listening to the episode from last year, I'm like, oh, wait, it's the exact same premise. We have a character that's bullied, and over the course of the night, they get their comeuppance on the bullies, and then there's like a twist at the end. Well, there's more of a twist in jack-o'-lanterns than there is in this. But at the end, it's like, oh, the good guys are really kind of like bad guys, and this is the opposite, where the bad guy, the novelty store clerk owner, is actually not a bad guy; he's a good guy, or he's more a misunderstood guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas the other one, it's like, oh, here are our friends that moved out of town, but they're aliens, and they're going to come back and murder us next year unless we play nice. And it's like, oh, okay.
I think with that being said, you might really enjoy, and it was one of the episodes I was tempted to. It's another two-parter. Since we didn't do it this year, we'll definitely do it next year. But it's One Day at Horrorland, when the family goes to an amusement park.
Oh, Horrorland, yeah.
Yeah, and that one has a lot of great costumes, a lot of weird imagery, a lot of, I think the similar depictions of things that we've discussed in the Haunted Mask episode. I think you'd like that one. Also, maybe The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. That has some good imagery, and that's very kind of, has the same feeling of maybe atmosphere, I would say. Takes place in a very different setting, not Halloween, more on a farm, but yeah, we'll have to see where we go next year. Right. When we listen to, when I have to listen to 2 Goosebumps episodes to prepare.
Because I remember back in high school when you were introducing me to all this, there was the episode with the werewolf where like that's a 2-parter one, right?
Oh yeah, I think it's Welcome to Fever Swamp. Yeah.
Yeah. And where like the first like episode ends with the kid like looking out the window and has like the bars on the window and the werewolf tries to get in.
Yep.
And the thing I've always loved about that is I love that it's like 100% it's like fluorescent light lit. So you see everything on the mask and it looks so real. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the mask looks real, but I mean like it looks like it's like a werewolf creature's trying to get in through a window and the only thing that's stopping him is the bars. I've always loved that. Like I remember even watching that back like 11 years ago now. And I can still remember that because it was really like it was a very vivid thing where it's like, oh God, it's like it feels like a real bedroom because the lighting feels like the same sort of lighting that like however the kid was, a boy would have in his room, and the werewolf's trying to get in there. And then like, oh wait, that's like a 10-second moment out of like a 40-minute long like story, and that's the only moment like it in the entire story.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just like a girl like walking around like an abandoned house, and it's like, oh.
Yep, yeah, that's not one of the better ones.
But I do like that moment. That moment is great though. Great moment, otherwise mediocre episode.
Right on.
Except for Trilogy.
Oh God, that's all terrible.
I watched that once. I remember watching it once and just remembering the name because I found it's fun to say Trilogy.
Yeah, true. That I think we mentioned it last year, but that's the one of the I think or two. There's a 3-parter, and like 2 out of the 3 parts are basically like if you're greedy, you're just as evil as someone who enjoys baseball. Like the message is very strange.
Sounds about right.
It's like because someone like a brother wants to borrow money from the sister, and the sister's like, I'm going to charge you interest. And the brother's like, that's not right. Capitalism is bad because this isn't based off a Goosebumps book. So what do we write other than capitalism is bad? And then the kid goes on and focus on him, and he likes baseball. And someone's like, baseball's stupid. You're evil. And they equate them throughout 2 like episodes. It's nonsense. It's terrible.
Madness.
Absolutely. I don't remember what the 3rd part. I think they like have to get out of the. Because it's also a mix of like Beetlejuice. I think they're in a miniature. Like Beetlejuice lives in the miniature train set.
Yeah.
I think it's like they get transported into a miniature and they have to find some way to escape, and that's what the 3rd part's about. And one girl has to realize that she has to like do charity to escape, and the other person has to give up baseball, I guess.
All right, call back to Wonder Chosen. Rob just said do charity.
Do charity. I'm going to give it a charity all night long.
Charity, your mouth is like velvet. We have to insert that clip, right?
Oh, definitely.
Oh boy, I can't wait to cash in our pirate treasure.
What are you going to do with your cut of the money?
I'm going to give all my money to charity. Oh, charity, take it. Take the whole thing. It's a write-off.
I'm gonna give it to charity hard and fast all night long. Take it. It's 2 a.m. I'm having so much fun.
Damn, you were tearing them victims up.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Wonder Chosen. You know, there should be a Wonder Chosen Halloween special. How much grant money do we need? How much money from Mark Cuban do we need to go get Vernon Chapman to go do a Wonder Chosen Halloween special?
I don't know if the money is the aspect. I think we might need to run a Misery type plot and capture Vernon Chapman and John Lee and hobble them until they make a Halloween special for us.
I know that's the thing I see on Twitter every once and again. Someone's like, "Oh, you can make one media project come to fruition. What would it be?" I want Halloween special Wonder Chosen.
Slaves. They restarted Wonder Chosen slaves.
Oh boy! All right, Rob. With that being said, anything else, or do we delve into our questions?
I think Carly Beth is ready to Carly Beth some Carly Beth questions, right? Carly Beth?
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. It's me, Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Oh dear. All right, Rob. I know we have to make we're actually going to have to, for this discussion, we are going to have to retroactively alter a previous Cinemoddities and late night movie ranking. Because in the Goosebumps discussion, we judged it on the metric of all of Goosebumps.
Yes, we did.
And now we're going to have to go back and for our 2-year anniversary, we'll have to amend this. So take note in the spreadsheet, Rob, when you're hearing this.
Okay.
Again, is that we're going to have to alter that in the 2-year anniversary episode. But for this episode, we're going to have to judge it based on our comments. We're going to be doing another Goosebumps episode next year.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to judge the Cinemoddities and late night movie status just on these episodes and not the show at large.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I thought the same thing when I listened to our episode from last year. But even though I feel I'm in agreement with you, I think my answers to this year don't change. I'm still going to go yes for late night in the month of October. I'm still sticking with that. I think that harkens back to your sentiment. There's no point of watching some of this stuff, scary stuff in April or anything like that. So I definitely want it grounded in the month of October. But I'm still going to have to say no to Cinemoddities. This is still just Goosebumps to me. Nothing really is out there. I know you have your Haunted Mask ideals now that I've shown that to you.
Oh, yeah.
But this is still just good old nostalgia-driven tradition for me, and nothing's really odd. It's still just kids programming. So I'm going to go no to Cinemoddities, yes in the month of October to late night. And I will hand it over to Zack for maybe a diatribe on why Haunted Mask is a Cinemoddity.
Haunted Mask is beyond. It's a gem. The fact that I've rewatched it twice. I want on record that when Rob gives me something to watch, it's oh no. And it's very much I could grit my teeth and have to sit there put the strap of leather in between my teeth to kind of.
Yes, it's usually picture in picture with Death Wish, right?
No, that's only for Aristocats.
Oh, okay. Only that specific.
Only that. No, that's the antidote to Aristocats. Someone's I had to watch the Aristocats the other day. It's did you have your copy of Death Wish on hand?
You got your Blu-ray changer.
Exactly. No. Haunted Mask is nothing short of a masterpiece. It's perfect in every sense of the word. Beyond just a Cinemoddities and a late night movie. Again, like I said, for most Rob Cinemoddities or things I have to watch, Rob's choices, which I hope he enjoys because he's not allowed to pick a movie for a while after this. Because I want to record that I'm judging this only on the Haunted Mask. The other two, and I want it in the spreadsheet, I want to flush them down the toilet. That's what I want to do, both of them, because they're like Shock Street is horrible. The not Ryan Gosling is fun for what it's worth, but it's also not very good. But yeah, they get flushed down the toilet. But no, Haunted Mask is perfect. Absolute Cinemoddity because it actually elevates children's TV show entertainment. It's the sort of entertainment and filmmaking that everything should be trying to do, whether it be just like even we were talking before the recording about the new Twilight Zone. I would imagine that not a single episode of the new Twilight Zone is even half as good as the Haunted Mask is. And yeah, I think it sets a new bar for entertainment in the sense of like, oh, it's trying to appeal to kids and appeal to an adult in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a definition of all ages entertainment, and that's extremely rare to come by these days, especially in the age of like Disney where everything's designed for everyone, and in the interim somehow it appeals to nobody in general. And but yeah, absolutely. Again, late night movie, like Rob said, I agree. You have to kind of keep this to like Monstober. And I want it on the record that Monstober now, I'm changing the goalpost on Monstober. Monstober is from like the last week of July to like the first week of November. That is Monstober now. Monstober is no longer October, because I remember I saw something Disney at the theme parks has their like version of like their counter programming version of what Universal's Halloween Horror Nights.
Oh, okay.
Except they call it Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween.
Ugh.
And that is the only correct response to have to somebody telling you that for the first time.
Yeah, that does not sound appealing in the slightest.
Again, it's meant for like kids like ages like probably like 2 to 7. So like I don't blame them. Again, correct response. So, but the weird thing is that like Disney kept moving the dates on that further and further out to the point where they actually, the first like Mickey's Not So Scary thing is like August like 6th. I'm not making that up.
Oh, okay.
Not making it up at all. So the rate it's going, because I saw it even on Twitter, someone's like, you people gotta cut it out with this, like, this is Halloween, and it's like July 31st at midnight. So with that being said, Monstober can range. I'm not saying you start celebrating it that early, but I've also realized too, when it comes to like the department stores, like your Walmarts, your Targets, your like Michaels, your like different stores that have like festive like aisles.
Yeah.
By like the end of September, all the Halloween stuff is gone and it's Christmas. If you want Halloween decorations in the month of October, you are out of luck.
Yeah.
I remember once looking for Halloween decorations like October 15th, and I couldn't find any of it. And if I did, it was like all on clearance for like 90% marked off. And all they have is
bad stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it's stuff that nobody wants. It's like hundreds of like pumpkin carving kits. And it's like, that's why I've realized, like, if you want to celebrate Halloween now and actually get like other people, like actually get in the vibe of it, you have to start celebrating it in like July.
Okay.
And I want on record that there's a very real possibility that like Monstober next year, because Rob knows that I've been talking about this for a while, that I want to do the origins of the slasher genre. And every single time Rob asks me, like, well, how many episodes would that entail? The number just keeps increasing to the point where it was like, Rob, I think I've narrowed it down. He's like, okay, how many episodes is it? And I'm like, 36. And he's like, Zach, that's like 3/4 of a year. And I'm like, no, I can narrow it down to maybe 30 if I really focus.
I think this is why Zach so quickly, in air quotes, quickly acquiesced to my sketch comedy series, because he was like, I need to cut it off at 2 months. He's like, if I put it off any longer, Rob's going to argue for 3 months, and we're not having that.
That's the thing, though, is I want to have like the sketch comedy for year, but I know at that point I've set a very dangerous precedent, because then Rob's going to be like, Zach, there's like 18 seasons of Mad TV.
Yes. I think that's when this podcast will splinter, and it's going to be like late movies with Rob and night movies with Zach, and we're going to release episodes separately every week, and one's going to be about sketch comedy, one's going to be about slasher movies.
Yes.
And eventually after a year we'll come back together and be like, it's been a while, Zach.
Yeah, I get every other Monday with the podcast.
Okay, we're going to court. We're splitting custody of our podcasts like it's a child.
Oh boy, yeah. So that's Cinemoddities. 100%. Actually, I'd say elevates Cinemoddities to a whole nother level because it does the perfect, again, like the hairline crevice of just, it's so campy, but it doesn't go over that point.
Sure.
I would rank this up there with like the Evil Dead 2 in the sense of like its perfect campiness.
Nice. I'm glad to hear it. See, there's good Goosebumps, Zach. You're going to like it a little more every year.
There's a good Goosebump. There's a Goosebump.
Goosebump, one and a half Goosebumps, because you liked the jack-o'-lantern.
I did like that. I enjoyed that, but nowhere near as much as I enjoyed this.
Yeah. Okay, it's getting better. Next year, you're going to be a full on the Goosebumps bandwagon.
I don't know. That Carly Beth thing, man. And I think the part of it, too, is the Carly Beth thing is like that weird sort of just like real world like question mark. Like, what's that meme of the guy, like, it's like the black guy with his head tilted, has like the question marks above his head?
Oh, yeah.
That's what the Carly Beth thing is because it's that perfect little just like garnish. It's that like perfect like little emerald bam. It's that little flourish. It's like, why is this here? Like
Carly
this is
Beth?
It's true though. Why do you need to say her name over 50 times?
Yeah,
there's no explanation for that. Unless there's somebody, the editor had some weird sick fetish for saying a child's name.
Yeah, who knows? We have to get her on. Long and short, we need the answers.
We need the answers, along with the editor. And R.L. Stein. We'll invite everybody on.
Yep, and they're all going to be like, we don't remember doing this at all. That part of our brain has been degraded for years. And like two of them are going to be like, from drugs, and the other two are going to be like, surgically.
Snack Rob. We have a whole other Monstober for the Cinemoddities restaurant.
Ooh, I'm excited. I'm gonna take one because I think Zach is gonna pitch something related to it, but I know he's not gonna go in the same way that I am, and it is related to the worm that Carly Beth eats in her sandwich. So something that we did not get to discuss during the Sketch Comedy Fort month was Kroll Show, and I don't know if Zach knows this because it did. I think it got some viral video status on the internet. There was a sketch in Kroll Show where Nick Kroll and John Mulaney would dress up as two old people, like old, very stereotypical Jewish people. And they basically had a local access channel TV show where they would sit at a diner and they'd have a guest. And they would talk about nothing with the guest. And very quickly, because it's sketch comedy, a waiter would bring a plate to the table and the plate would have a sandwich on it with like a huge mound of tuna, like enough tuna to cover the bottom slice of bread, and so much tuna that like the top slice of bread was comically small. And the gist of this sketch was that they would always like bring this to the table, and the two old Jewish dudes would be like, "Why would you order that? That's way too much tuna. You look like a fool." And like the joke is that they think it's their version of a prank show. And the guests never understand what's going on, like why they were served too much tuna.
You must have seen our ad looking for a nanny.
Yes.
Flown here for the job interview.
You've got 3 boys, and you're looking for a nanny.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a nanny, and here I am.
Yeah, we remember.
So I just...
Little did you know that you would be pranked with too much tuna. So tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been working for 10 years as
what is this? What did you order? What has been placed in
What did you do? I'm sorry, I don't...
You've been pranked. Look at that.
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't you say that that is...
So are they're not coming, the children?
Who?
The kids?
What kids? Oh, the fake ad. No, there's no kids. No kids. Nope. There's one baby here. That guy right there.
I don't even like tuna, and it made me fly all the way over here from London.
Why didn't you take the boat? Yeah, I thought you were going to take a liner.
So there's no job, and there's no children, and...
May I ask you a question? And I don't mean to be rude. Do you have f***ing memento disease? Because every 2 minutes, is there a job? Is there kids? There's no kids, there's no job. There's too much tuna. You're on a prank show.
Right.
Would you sign a release?
So now that the stage has been set, Zach, too much worms. I want 2 pieces of bread with literally like hundreds of worms on a plate. And I want it to be the same thing where like someone will order, we'll call it something else on the menu. Like maybe it'll have like a more accessible name, but then the waiter will bring out this plate of just a worm sandwich and make fun of the customer. Be like, why would you order so many worms? Why would you want to eat nothing but worms? And then I want them to go a step further, and I want our wait staff to like goad the customer. Be like, you ordered it, eat the worms. Eat the worms, Carly Beth. And because in the episode of The Haunted Mask, they put the worm in the sandwich, and then they like walk 2 feet away and put their like hands on their chin, like they're we can't wait to see what's gonna happen. And I really want to push that to the extreme in our restaurant. So what do you think? Too much worms. I think grammatically it should be too many worms, but since too much tuna, too much worms, that's what we're going with.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's perfect, Rob. It features a disgusting food item and voyeurism, 2 classic Cinemoddities restaurant tropes.
The hallmarks, yes. Those, like some delis on the glass panes, it'll say like, fresh meats, fresh cheeses, artisan wines, or something like that. Like those are the words that you just said on the outside of the Cinemoddities restaurant. Disgusting foods, voyeurism. So I definitely wanted that. Too much worms. I think a giant worm sandwich would be great. Real worms, live worms, still squirming around. But the other snack I had to pitch, we didn't mention it, but it was from our Say Cheese and Die Again episode. The night that Greg, not Ryan Gosling, goes to get the camera from the abandoned warehouse, which has been destroyed, he comes back home, and apparently he's come back home too late. And his mother is like, Greg, where have you been? You missed dinner, but dinner's in the fridge. And he's like, I'm not hungry, Mom. And in this whole scene, the mother is standing in like the doorway, talking to Greg as he's trying to go upstairs with the camera, and she's just holding a plate with a piece of cake on it. She doesn't eat any of it. She's just holding it. And as this scene goes on, Greg's brother starts to come down the stairs, and he's like, get out of the way, Squirt. I'm late for work. And the mother goes, you were late for work yesterday, you son of a bitch. What's wrong with you? Still holding this piece of cake. At this point, there's the mother and 2 sons. The mother's screaming at the sons as they're on the stairway. She's just standing there, I don't know, being a bitch, because what time is it that the guy's going to work at a photo store after dinner? How is he late? But the pièce de résistance, Greg goes upstairs, the brother leaves for work, we get one shot of the mother. Finally, she eats her piece of cake and shrugs her shoulders like, whatever, and the scene ends. So here's my pitch, Zach. It is a piece of disappointed child cake. And it's a piece of cake that you order at the end of the night because the children you brought to the restaurant were so misbehaved, you just need to shrug it off and go, fuck it, with a good piece of cake. So it's something for the parents of the Cinemoddities restaurant. What do you think? I only had 2 snacks this episode, but I put a lot of thought into it.
Oh, okay. It was a small hand, but a lot of emphasis put on it.
Yeah, so this is something for the parents. Just brush it off, and I don't know, maybe you get like a shot of tequila with it to really say fuck it at the end of the night, right before you have to drive home. We don't condone that or condemn it at the Cinemoddities restaurant, because as the waiver says, once you leave those doors, we are no liability.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Did that scene stand out to you? How she was just holding cake and doing nothing with it for like 3 minutes?
That was the 3rd episode, right? And that's
in chronology, and which you watched, but the first one we discussed today. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. At that point I was checked out. Like at that point I was kind of like, and you already had you started off high. And it was all downhill after there. Shock Street ruined it all.
Okay. I'm imagining you started Say Cheese and Die Again, and as soon as you saw it wasn't Ryan Gosling, you were like, okay, crossword puzzle time.
As soon as I realized this, I know that was coming, that episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, and like I see like, oh, it's off-brand Ryan Gosling. I'm like, okay, done. I was hoping to see Spider, but I'm very disappointed he didn't show up.
All right, Zach, what snacks did you say? Cheese, Carly Beth.
Crossover.
What did you have, Mr. Snack Master?
All right. I think I'm going to change my name from Snack Master to like Ornamentation Master because I want to decorate the restaurant with like the unlucky ones. I'm sorry, the unloved ones.
Oh, sure.
I also want the exact prop of Carly Beth's head. I want that.
Oh, the plaster of Paris mold?
Yes, I want that. I want much like the Chauncey puppet and the Dune from Jodorowsky's Dune. I want that.
Okay.
I want the real one. The unloved ones can be reproductions. I think they actually do make. I think you can buy I know you can buy the mask that she wears.
Ooh, right on.
But I want those, but I want them kind of like the equivalent of what Disney has at the Haunted Mansion, where the bus singing. I want the unlucky ones. I keep saying unlucky ones. The unloved ones, and I want them doing like barbershop quartetting.
Oh, that's exactly what I was about to say. Like an a cappella quartet thing where we are unloved.
But I want more a cappella though too, because I want they can do the backups for the Vox Lux animatronic.
Oh, definitely, absolutely, yeah. That could, yeah. That sounds awesome. Because there's like 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could get a good group going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you retarded?
You got that look in your eye when the world just happens to you.
EKG. And then after that, I figured I don't know if we had this yet at the Cinemoddities restaurant. We probably do. But we have to have some sort of like, oh God, there's a word for it. I can't think of what it is right now. But kind of like a haunted mansion attraction. There's a name for that. Dark Ride? Yeah, Dark Ride.
Oh, sure.
It's the dune buggy from Shock Street. And we only build it to the part where it takes you in. You're given blasters. And you're told, oh, don't get out of the ride vehicle, but if anything happens, you have your blaster. And the cart gets there, and it says the ride has broken down, and you just sit there until eventually you just get out and leave.
And that blaring alarm plays where don't exit the tram.
Yep. It just sits there.
Oh, okay, interesting. I hope that as these are being built, we interweave them with maybe one of the courses for the Terminator laser tag. So that the people running around in the machine war are just like jumping over this cart that people can't leave, and they don't have anything to do with the laser tag. And they're like, "What's going on?" And it'd be like they're just getting shot at with laser guns, and their laser guns aren't compatible with the Terminator laser guns or something. Like it's true. You are removed from every other aspect of the restaurant. You're just sitting there waiting.
To make it even more like the Haunted Mansion, we'll have like, what is it called? A pepper ghost effect, where there'll be like mirrors placed, so like you'll see the battle going on like in front of you, but you can't interact with it at all.
Yes. Okay. And it'll switch from the laser tag to the animatronics to people actually eating food, and it's like you can't do any of this.
It's voyeurism again.
Exactly, 100% voyeurism. That's right on our front door.
If you're not being watched and being made uncomfortable without your permission, you are not at the Cinemoddities restaurant. That's usually the motto in general. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not at the Cinemoddities restaurant.
Indeed.
If you don't have intestinal bleeding, you are not at the Cinemoddities restaurant.
Intestinal bleeding anywhere from tonight to 3 years from now. We guarantee it.
Ah, boy. All right, Rob, anything other snacks, or is that it?
No, that was all I had. If that's all you had, I guess the question is, Zack being the keeper of Monstober, and of course it's become a continuously running fact, not even a running joke, that Monstober changes every time Zack blinks and breathes. Do you want to give any indication about what might come next week, or are we actually certain? Because I think you highlighted
I'm for certain.
earlier.
Yes, we know for certain. Folks, this is the first time in Cinemod, in the long year and a half of Cinemoddities, where I actually do have at least the next 3 discussions locked down topic-wise.
Let's not get that crazy. Let's just
you're right. You're right. It's a very real possibility I change it again. But yes, the very next one is 100% certain, and we will play a musical cue as a hint. No one's going to get it. No one is going to get it.
No one's seen this movie, right?
No,
except us.
It doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure, right?
I think when I said something to you about it both of us were like, did that exist or was it a fever dream when we were in high school together? Like, did we play so much Halo and Guitar Hero that we just tripped out and envisioned this movie? But it exists, apparently.
If only there was enough Guitar Hero and Halo to consume to get you to this point.
The audience should be well aware I'm going to be doing some screaming next week.
Oh, it's going to be glorious. Folks, if you thought my enthusiasm for this week's discussion was great, wait until next week. We have truly a gem. And the best... And that's not even the best part of the whole movie.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think I haven't rewatched this since the last time we watched it, so I'm pumped to shit for this.
I've encountered it a few times in the sense of like the audio is on my computer, which is a really weird thing to say.
I think you sent me like the theme song or something when we started Cinemoddities. You were like, "This could be some sound effect we use."
Yes, that was the proposed. Okay, I don't want to get it. Okay, we'll save it for next week. You've already heard the musical cue, but yes, there's going to be a bunch of stories about next week's episode. Next week's episode is one of those ones where like I wasn't even thinking about it. Rob's the one who suggested it, and it was just like, oh, it's perfect. It is. It's up there with like an Eraserhead level discussion or something of that sort where it's like, okay, this is going, like if we don't do this one, it's like Real Scary Stories. If I don't do this justice, I'm going to be insanely disappointed with myself. And no matter how much I prep, after we record a 4-hour-long discussion, I'll be like, how did I forget about that part?
Yeah, I'm jacked. I am jacked up.
But we'll get to that next week. So, Rob, I think we both can agree, even though as much as we both enjoy the Goosebumps theme song, we might have to make a slight adjustment for this week, or for this specific instance in Goosebumps history.
We'll see how it goes, as long as I get to play some Carly Beth in reverse, right?
Something like that.
I gotta get some of it, because I'm sure it exists in forward, here.
Oh, it does.
So, yep, I guess this is also a quick plug I want to put. This is possibly the last week it's worth mentioning Fanvember, right?
Yeah, for the most part. No,
okay.
It depends. Yeah, it depends on how fast we record things.
Yeah. So remember, month of November, throw your suggestions to us. Everybody gets one. We'll take and review them. We'll vote for them in the least democratic way possible. Zach and I will probably argue about them. But we'll see how it goes.
Yes. Fanvember.
And until then, I'm Carly Beth, joined as always by Carly Beth. And until next week on Carly Beth, but not Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
I am become Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth, you.
Carly Beth. It's Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth, you.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. What is Carly Beth? Carly Beth. Carly Beth.
Carly Beth. Carly Beth.